I watched from my church office as my son stepped out of a borrowed taxi. He stared at the empty lot where his house used to stand. They'd been gone 6 days. On a Caribbean cruise I was supposed to fund. 6 days while I sold their home, drained their accounts, handed fraud evidence to prosecutors. My own son had filed papers declaring me mentally incompetent. His plan was to seize my church and everything I'd built. They thought I was too old to fight back. Before I explain how a 60-year-old Memphis pastor destroyed their conspiracy while they vacationed on a beach, hit subscribe if you've been betrayed by family you raised. But let me start 3 weeks earlier, with the moment I discovered what they were planning. Thank you for being here with me today. Before we begin, please drop a comment below. Let me know where you're listening from and what you're doing right now. I read every single one. Quick note, some details have been adjusted for storytelling and privacy. What truly matters is the message at the heart of it all. My phone lit up at 6 in the morning with a text from Everett, and I knew immediately something was wrong. My 33-year-old son had always been gentle-hearted, the kind of man who avoided conflict at any cost. But marriage to Leora had changed him in ways I was only beginning to understand. The message glowed on the screen. Dad, plans changed. Council thinks you need rest at home. Leora's family will represent us at the anniversary celebration. I sat there in my kitchen, coffee cooling in my hand, staring at those 16 words. At 60 years old, I had spent 3 decades serving Cornerstone Community Church in Memphis, living simply in my modest home 2 miles from the pulpit. What my son didn't know was that I'd quietly built a fortune he couldn't begin to imagine. $180,000. I had written that check myself just 3 weeks ago to fund the Caribbean trip for our church's 50th anniversary. My late wife, Ruth, gone 2 years now at just 58, would have loved to see the church she helped build celebrate half a century. She would have seen through this text message in an instant. Ruth had always possessed a clarity about people that I sometimes lacked, but the council thinks I need rest. When had my son started letting others speak for him? I reread the message. Leora's family will represent us, not our family, but hers. Leora, my daughter-in-law of 5 years, had always smiled sweetly while asking pointed questions about money, and I had always deflected just as sweetly in return. Ruth had been gone 2 years. Some days, the silence in this house still caught me by surprise. I set my coffee down on the granite counter, hands steady. 40 years of dealing with church politics had taught me patience. 3 weeks ago, Leora had asked how I afforded such generosity on a pastor's pension. I'd smiled and said something about careful saving. She had smiled back, but her eyes had stayed calculating. The pieces hadn't formed a picture yet, but I recognized a pattern. Last month, Everett had been evasive when I asked about his work at the church. 2 weeks ago, I'd noticed unusual visitors in the church office, professional types in expensive suits who didn't quite fit our congregation's demographics. And now this text, carefully worded, excluding me from a celebration I had personally funded. I picked up my phone again, thumb hovering over Everett's name. A phone call would be normal. A father checking on his son, asking questions. But something stopped me. The text felt rehearsed, like Everett was reading from a script someone else had written. You learn things when you spend 3 decades shepherding a congregation through their worst moments. You learn to hear what people aren't saying. You learn to spot the tells that indicate someone's hiding something they're afraid you'll discover. Everett's message had all the tells. I opened my laptop and pulled up my bank statements. The $180,000 had cleared 5 days ago, drawn from the account Everett thought was my only one. He had no idea about the others. No idea about the investments Ruth and I had made over 30 years, the real estate holdings, the carefully structured trusts. My son thought he was dealing with a naive old pastor living on a fixed income. I read the text a 3rd time. The words hadn't changed, but the meaning grew clearer with each pass. This wasn't about a vacation. Something larger was moving beneath the surface. And my son, my only son, was somehow part of it. The question wasn't whether I would respond. The question was what Leora wanted, and why she thought excluding me from a trip I'd funded would accomplish her goal. I needed to hear Everett's voice. I pressed call on his number. "Vernon, darling." Leora's voice poured through the speaker like honey laced with condescension. "Everett's in the shower, but there's really nothing to discuss. The council thinks you need proper rest." Not hello, not how are you feeling, just immediate dismissal, as if I were a confused child. "I'd like to speak with my son," I said quietly. "Of course you would. But honestly, Vernon, after Ruth passed, we've all noticed little confusions, memory lapses. It's perfectly natural at your age." Her tone dripped with manufactured concern. "The church family just wants you comfortable at home, not stressed by travel and crowds. Memory lapses, confusions, at your age." Each phrase carefully chosen, each word a brick in a narrative she was building. "I appreciate the concern," I said. "Please have Everett call me when he's available. I'm sure he will when there's time. The trip planning is quite demanding." She ended the call before I could respond. When someone speaks to you like you're a confused child, they're telling you exactly what they plan to make you. 3 hours later, my doorbell rang. Leora stood on my porch wearing a cream-colored dress and practiced devotion. "I just wanted to see how you're feeling, Vernon," she said, stepping inside without invitation. "Make sure you're not upset about the trip." "Not upset," I said. Surprised. "Well, you know how these things are. The council has everyone's best interests at heart." Her eyes swept my living room like a real estate appraiser. I led her toward my study. I was just reviewing some paperwork, church business. My desk sat near the window, afternoon light streaming across scattered documents I'd deliberately arranged. In the half-open drawer, positioned precisely, an old bank statement lay visible. The balance clear enough. $847,612.33. I watched her from the corner of my eye as I shuffled papers. "Oh, just reviewing some old church records," I said. "Nothing important." Her gaze locked onto that drawer. I saw her body go still the way a cat does when it spots prey. Her pupils dilated. Her breathing changed, just a fraction. But I'd spent 40 years reading faces across a pulpit. I knew hunger when I saw it. "Well," she said, her voice tight despite the smile. "I should let you rest. You look tired." "I'm fine, Leora. Never better." She moved toward the door, but her eyes flicked back to my desk once more. That drawer, those numbers, at the door. She turned with that brilliant, strained smile. "We'll check on you again before the trip. Make sure you have everything you need." "That's very kind." I stood in the doorway, watching her walk to her car. She moved with forced casualness, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the tremor in her hands. She thought she'd successfully checked on the confused old man while gathering intelligence, but she'd shown me everything I needed to know. That split second when her eyes found those numbers, the way her breath caught, the calculation that flashed across her face before she remembered to look concerned. She'd seen something she wasn't supposed to see, and now I knew exactly what she wanted. The question was what she planned to do about it, and how far she was willing to go. I closed the door and returned to my desk. The bank statement still lay in that drawer, the bait that had revealed her true nature. Tomorrow, I would need to understand the full scope of what was happening, but tonight, I knew enough. Leora didn't care about my mental state or my need for rest. She cared about $800,000 she believed a confused old pastor couldn't properly protect. Now I knew what Leora wanted. The question was how she planned to take it. My phone buzzed at 8 that evening. Not a call this time, an automated alert from First Tennessee Bank. Subject line: Urgent. Activity notification. Cornerstone Community Charity Fund. I opened the message, and everything suddenly made sense. 3 withdrawals, same amount, same day. each transaction stamped with times less than an hour apart: 2:47 p.m., 3:12 p.m., 3:41 p.m. $9,900, $9,900, $9,900. $29,700 total pulled from the charity fund Everett managed. The fund I'd established 15 years ago to help congregation members facing medical emergencies and unexpected hardships. Money donated by faithful members who trusted their church to use it wisely. Gone. Withdrawn in 3 precise transactions while I sat in my study, watching Leora's eyes devour that bank statement. But it wasn't the theft that stopped my breath. It was the amount. $9,900. Not $10,000. Not $9,500. Not a round number you'd withdraw if you needed cash for legitimate expenses. Exactly $9,900. You don't accidentally withdraw that specific amount 3 times in a row. That number has one purpose only: avoiding the currency transaction report threshold. Any cash transaction of $10,000 or more gets automatically reported to the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. It's federal law designed to catch money laundering and structured transactions. My son didn't learn about CTR thresholds from managing bake sales and youth group fundraisers. I pulled up my laptop and logged into the full account history. There it was. The withdrawal authorization, electronically signed by Everett Michael Garrison at 2:43 p.m. 4 minutes later, the first 99 hit, then the second, then the third. While Leora sat in my study, pretending to check on my well-being, my son was executing a structured cash withdrawal designed to evade federal detection. I sat back in my chair, the laptop screen glowing in the darkening office. The Memphis evening had turned golden outside my window, but I barely noticed. I was cataloging facts with the methodical precision of a prosecutor building a case. Fact 1. This morning, Everett sent a text excluding me from a trip I funded. Fact 2. This afternoon, Leora appeared at my door, spouting concerns about my mental capacity. Fact 3. That same afternoon, my son withdrew nearly $30,000 in structured transactions. Fact 4. Someone had taught him exactly how to do it without triggering alerts. The bank statement glowed in my hands, but I felt nothing except the slow, methodical calculation of a man who just discovered his son had declared war. This wasn't family drama. This wasn't a disagreement about vacation plans or concerns about an aging parent. This was theft executed with criminal sophistication. I thought about Leora's questions over the past month, Everett's evasiveness, those well-dressed visitors at the church. The pieces were connecting, forming a picture I was only beginning to see clearly. They'd planned this, planned it carefully, with outside help. The mental incompetency narrative Leora was building, the structured withdrawals, the trip that excluded me, all of it coordinated. I set the phone down on my desk with surgical precision. The screen's light faded to black, leaving me in the amber glow of the desk lamp. Someone had taught my son exactly how to steal without triggering federal alerts. Someone had shown Leora how to build a narrative of mental decline. Someone had orchestrated a conspiracy sophisticated enough to include currency transaction report avoidance. This wasn't amateur hour. This was professional. And tomorrow, when Everett finally called with whatever rehearsed explanation they'd prepared, I would listen carefully to every word. I would play the confused old pastor perfectly. I would gather every piece of intelligence I needed. Because wars aren't won by emotional reactions. They're won by patience, preparation, and cold strategic calculation. I needed to identify who was coaching him. That answer came at 7 the next morning, when my phone finally rang with Everett's name. 20 hours. My son had waited 20 hours after excluding me from a trip, after stealing nearly $30,000, before he could bring himself to actually speak to me. Dad, his voice carried forced warmth. I'm so sorry about the text yesterday. I should have called, but this is difficult to discuss. I said nothing, letting silence do the work. The thing is, he continued, and I heard paper rustling in the background. The council has been meeting. About you. About some concerns. Concerns. I kept my voice uncertain, slightly confused. Well, yes. They've noticed some episodes. Times when you seem confused about dates, repeat stories you've already told. It's perfectly natural. Dad, especially after Mom died. Grief affects everyone differently. Episodes. Confusion. Natural. Each word carefully selected. Each pause calculated. I'd heard this exact cadence 1,000 times. People reading prepared statements at church meetings, trying to sound spontaneous while following a script. I don't understand, I said, adding just the right note of hurt bewilderment. No one's blaming you, but the council thinks you need proper medical supervision, just for a while. They suggested a rest period at home with regular wellness checks, just until you're feeling stronger. Medical supervision, regular wellness checks, rest period. When your own child lies to you, you hear it in the spaces between words, the breath he takes before each prepared phrase, the slight pitch change when he reaches something he's memorized versus something spontaneous. Who said this? I asked. Which council members? Well, it was a consensus. Everyone noticed. When was this meeting? A pause. Too long. Last week. They didn't want to alarm you. I'd attended that council meeting. We'd discussed youth group funding and the summer curriculum. No one had mentioned my mental state. And the trip? I asked softly. That's why I can't go. Dad, a Caribbean resort isn't the right environment for someone who needs stability, familiar surroundings. You'll be more comfortable here. Stability, familiar surroundings, more comfortable. Legal phrases dressed in pastoral concern. This wasn't Everett's vocabulary. My son talked about grace and fellowship, not medical supervision and wellness checks. I let silence hang on the line just long enough to sound like confusion, like an old man gathering scattered thoughts. I suppose the council knows best, I said finally, voice small. They do, Dad. They really do. And Leora and I will check on you regularly. Make sure you have everything you need. That's very kind. We love you. We just want you safe and healthy. I know you do, son. The lie tasted bitter, but I delivered it perfectly. I should go, Everett said quickly. Trip planning, but I'll stop by before we leave. Make sure you're settled. Thank you for calling. Of course. I'm sorry I didn't do it sooner. He ended the call before I could respond. I set the phone on my kitchen counter and stared out the window at the Memphis morning. Sunlight filtered through oak trees, painting shadows across my yard. Everything looked normal, peaceful. But I'd just listened to my son deliver a scripted performance designed to paint me as mentally incompetent. Medical supervision wasn't a phrase you picked up casually. It was specific legal terminology used in guardianship proceedings, situations where courts appointed someone to manage another person's affairs because they could no longer do so themselves. Everett hadn't learned that at church council meetings. Someone with legal expertise had coached him. Someone who knew exactly which phrases to use, which terms would build a paper trail. I smiled then, standing alone in my kitchen. Not a warm smile, not forgiving, but the cold satisfaction of a man who'd just been handed exactly what he needed. They'd shown me their hand. Medical supervision, wellness checks, guardianship. Now I knew precisely what war we were fighting. I needed to confirm which doctor they'd recruited and how far the conspiracy reached. That answer came from an unexpected source. My 14-year-old granddaughter, Serena, appeared at my back gate that afternoon, still wearing her school backpack. She had those searching eyes that reminded me so much of her grandmother, Ruth. Perceptive, compassionate, and far too aware when adults were lying. "Grandpa, are you okay?" She dropped her backpack on my patio table. "Mom and Dad have been acting really weird since Sunday." "Weird how?" "Like whispering all the time. And Mom keeps asking me if you've seemed confused lately, if you forget things. She studied my face. You're not sick, are you? I'm fine, sweetheart. Never better. That's what I told her. Serena pulled at her backpack strap, nervous. But then, Monday night, I heard them on the phone really late. They were in the study, with the door almost closed, but I could hear them from the hallway. I kept my voice gentle. What did you hear? They were talking to a doctor about something serious. Dad sounded scared, like actually frightened. She met my eyes. They kept saying your name. I just wanted to make sure you're not sick. A doctor. Monday night. The same night Everett had avoided calling me until the next morning. I promise you, I'm healthy. I pulled her into a hug. Your parents are just worried about me being alone, that's all. She hugged back, but didn't quite believe me. Ruth would have known exactly how to protect Serena from this ugliness without lying to her. I was still learning how to navigate that balance alone. After Serena left for home, I drove to Cornerstone to clear my head. The church office was quiet, most staff already gone for the day. I stood in the administrative hallway, considering my next move. Pastor Garrison, a quiet voice behind me. I turned to find Ezra Kendrick, the young church assistant who'd appeared about 6 months ago offering administrative help. 28 years old, quiet and efficient, but with an observant quality that seemed unusual for a volunteer. He held a manila folder. I thought you might find this useful, Ezra said, offering it to me. Documentation on fund transfer protocols. Governance procedures for the charity account. I took the folder slowly. Why would I need this? Just seemed like something you should have on file, for reference. His eyes held mine for a moment. Intelligent, deliberate. In case questions arise about proper oversight. I opened the folder. Inside were detailed protocols for auditing church funds, recovering misappropriated donations, and documenting unauthorized withdrawals. Exactly what I would need to build a case against Everett's theft. Where did you get this? I compiled it from public church governance resources. Seemed prudent. He glanced toward the door. I have another appointment. You can reach me through the church office if needed. Who sends a stranger with exactly the right information at exactly the right time? Ezra, I said as he turned to leave. How long have you been volunteering here? 6 months, pastor, since January. A slight smile. Right around when certain irregularities might have begun, if anyone were paying attention. He disappeared around the corner before I could ask his full name or how to contact him directly. I stood in the empty hallway, holding the folder. Inside were procedures for recovering misappropriated funds, documentation requirements for reporting financial misconduct, and contact information for denominational oversight boards. Someone had been watching. Someone had noticed the same patterns I'd only just discovered, and that someone had chosen to help rather than report or intervene officially. But why? Who was Ezra Kendrick really? A concerned volunteer who'd noticed irregularities, a planted observer from some oversight body, or something else entirely. The folder felt heavier than paper should. It contained exactly what I would need very soon. Delivered by a stranger who appeared and vanished like smoke. Someone was helping me from the shadows, but I couldn't determine if they were guardian angel or something more calculated, and whether I could trust assistance from a source I didn't understand. I cut the headlights 2 blocks from the Germantown estate, letting my Buick coast into the shadow of an old magnolia. The dashboard clock read 9:47 p.m., late enough that the neighbors' windows had gone dark, early enough that Everett and Leora would still be awake inside the house I'd helped them buy 6 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd signed the down payment check in this very car. Proud father watching his son move up in the world. I approached through the Hendersons' side yard, grateful they were in Florida until August. The azaleas along Everett's property line provided perfect cover, thick enough to conceal a 60-year-old man in dark clothes, close enough to the living room window that I could hear voices when the breeze shifted right. Can't keep second-guessing this. Leora's voice carried through the partially open window, sharp with irritation. The doctor signed everything last week. Mental competency evaluation, decline assessment, the works. My blood went cold. Last week. Not next week. Not pending. Already done. Everett's response came quieter, forcing me to lean closer to the window frame. I know, but that call Monday rattled me. What if he suspects something? Your father suspects everyone of everything. It's paranoia, which actually strengthens our case. Leora's heels clicked across hardwood, moving closer to the window. I pressed deeper into the azaleas, feeling branches scrape against my jacket. Doctor, Reeves documented observable cognitive decline. Vernon, suspiciousness, poor financial judgment, giving away church money. He didn't give it away. We took it. Semantics. The point is, everything's in motion. We filed the petition day 3 of the trip when he's offshore. By the time he knows it's done. Day 3. I did the math quickly. They'd file Friday, April 12th. I'd be somewhere in international waters. Unreachable. Unable to contest. The precision was almost admirable. And the payments? Everett asked. If anyone looks at those withdrawals, 3 separate transactions under $10,000. Nothing triggers federal reporting. And honestly, Leora laughed, the sound carrying clearly through the spring night. For $29,000, Reeves would sign a statement saying Elvis is alive. The man's drowning in gambling debts. The structured withdrawals. The $29,700 I'd discovered Tuesday night, stolen in 3 careful increments, $9,900, $9,900, $9,900. I'd wondered what they'd needed it for. Now, I knew not luxury purchases or secret vacations, but the precise price of my legal freedom. I needed that doctor's full name. Dr. Reeves' first name, practice location, anything I could give Ezra to. The security light exploded to life above the garage. I froze, barely breathing, pressed flat against the brick foundation. Had I triggered the motion sensor? The light blazed across the driveway and side yard, throwing harsh shadows through the azalea branches. From inside the house, Everett's voice. What was that? Probably a raccoon. Those sensors pick up everything. Footsteps approached the window. Everett coming to investigate. I slowly shifted deeper into the bushes, feeling thorns catch fabric. Every movement amplified in my own ears. Through the branches, I could see his silhouette appear at the glass, backlit by the living room lamp, scanning the illuminated yard. 30 seconds passed like 30 minutes. Nothing there, Everett finally said, moving away from the window. I'm going to bed. Flight leaves early Saturday. 11 days. Vernon. Then, everything changes. I waited until their bedroom light went dark upstairs. Then, another 20 minutes for absolute certainty. The security light had cycled off after 5 minutes, returning the yard to darkness. When I finally extracted myself from the azaleas and made my way back through the Hendersons' property, my hands were shaking not from fear, but from cold, calculated rage. I had 11 days to find Dr. Reeves and dismantle everything they'd built. I sat in the darkness 2 blocks from the estate, phone screen casting blue light across my face. My hands had stopped shaking. The search bar waited, cursor blinking. Memphis physicians, Germantown family practice. The Whitfields. Leora's parents had been Everett's entry point into Germantown society 6 years ago. Old Memphis money, country club connections, the kind of people who kept the same family doctor for decades. If anyone knew which physician had signed those fraudulent evaluations, it would be in their medical history. I typed carefully, cross-referencing public records with physician databases. 3 family practices served the Germantown zip code where Clifford and Velma Whitfield lived. The 3rd result made my pulse quicken. Dr. General Hobart, a 62-year-old family physician practicing in Germantown, had served as the Whitfield family's personal doctor for over 2 decades, according to online records. His practice website featured testimonials from long-term patients, A photo of him shaking hands with the mayor at some charity event. All the trappings of respectability. But when I searched his name alongside Tennessee Medical Board, the careful facade cracked. Medical Board Complaint 2023. I read aloud to the empty car, my voice tight. Questionable mental competency certification in guardianship proceeding. The complaint had been filed 18 months ago by a family attorney representing an elderly woman whose children had attempted to place her under emergency guardianship. Dr. Hobart had provided the medical testimony supporting the petition documented cognitive decline, inability to manage finances, danger to herself. The board had investigated, but ultimately issued only a formal warning, citing insufficient evidence of intentional misconduct. Translation. They knew he'd stretched the truth, but couldn't prove he'd been paid to lie. I dug deeper, pulling up the original court case through the Shelby County Records database. Medical board complaints don't appear from nowhere. Someone had fought back against this doctor before, and nearly won. The case number led me to a dismissed guardianship petition dated March 2023. The proposed ward's name appeared in the public filing. Margaret Hensley, plaintiff. I knew that name. Margaret Hensley, a 74-year-old widow in our congregation, appeared in the court records as plaintiff in a dismissed guardianship case involving Dr. Hobart's testimony. I'd sat with her family through her husband Robert's funeral just last year, a quiet woman who attended Wednesday prayer meetings faithfully. Always arrived early. Always sat in the third pew from the back. Someone had tried to take her freedom. Dr. Hobart had signed the paperwork declaring her incompetent, and somehow, Margaret had won. The screen's glow reflected in my eyes as I scrolled through the case documents. The petition had been filed by Margaret's daughter and son-in-law in March 2023, citing their mother's declining mental state and inability to manage her late husband's estate. Dr. Hobart's signed evaluation supported every claim: memory loss, confusion, poor judgment with finances. But 3 months later, the case had been dismissed with prejudice. The judge's order included language about fraudulent medical testimony and bad faith proceedings. Margaret's attorney had successfully discredited Hobart's evaluation, exposed the scheme, and secured her complete freedom. The same doctor, the same playbook, the same Memphis courtroom where Leora and Everett planned to file their petition in 11 days. I checked Margaret's address in the church directory. She lived in Midtown, 15 minutes from Cornerstone. The case file listed her attorney, Luther Callahan, the same friend who'd offered to help me Monday afternoon at his office downtown. The connections weren't coincidences. This was a pattern, a repeating crime. And Margaret Hensley had the blueprint for defeating it. I saved the court case number to my phone and memorized Margaret's address. Dr. Hobart had tried this exact scheme before: fraudulent competency evaluations, emergency guardianship petitions, all of it. Margaret had fought him and apparently survived with her freedom intact. Tomorrow morning, I would find out exactly how she'd won. Margaret Hensley answered her door at 8 o'clock Wednesday morning, wearing a floral house dress and reading glasses pushed up into her silver hair. Recognition flickered across her face, followed immediately by something deeper understanding. "Pastor Vernon," she said quietly, stepping back to let me enter. I've been waiting 3 years for someone else to come asking about Gerald Hobart. I knew he'd do it again. Her living room was modest but immaculate. Family photos arranged on the mantel above a small fireplace. She gestured toward the sofa and disappeared into the kitchen, returning with 2 cups of coffee before I could decline. The china rattled slightly against the saucer as she set mine down. My own daughter paid him to sign papers saying I couldn't manage my affairs. Margaret began without preamble, setting into the armchair across from me. The evaluation took 15 minutes in his office. He'd written half of it before I arrived. Questions about what year it was, who was president, could I count backward from 100. I answered everything correctly. Pastor, everything. But the report he filed with the court said I was confused, disoriented, a danger to myself. I sipped the coffee to give my hands something to do. The bitterness matched my mood perfectly. How much did she pay him? $32,000. 3 separate checks, each under $10,000. Margaret's voice carried no emotion now, just factual precision. My son-in-law handled the transactions. They thought I'd never see the bank statements, that I'd be declared incompetent before I could fight back. The emergency guardianship petition was filed 6 days after the evaluation. The timeline matched what I'd overheard at Everett's window. Fast, surgical, designed to eliminate any chance of resistance. Margaret's hands trembled as she poured more coffee from the carafe on the side table, and I recognized the look in her eyes, the particular violation of being betrayed by your own children. Not strangers, not criminals off the street, but the people who'd sat at your dinner table, who you'd sacrificed everything to raise. That kind of treachery leaves scars that never fully heal. I was 3 days from losing this house, she continued. 3 days from being moved into some facility while my daughter sold everything Robert and I had built over 40 years of marriage. The court had already appointed a temporary guardian. I couldn't access my own bank accounts. What stopped them? My attorney caught the inconsistencies in Hobart's report, dates that didn't match, test results that contradicted each other, medical terminology used incorrectly. He deposed Hobart under oath, and the man fell apart on the stand. Admitted he'd spent less than 20 minutes with me. Couldn't remember specific answers I'd given. Had used a template evaluation he'd filed in 4 previous cases, almost word for word. I leaned forward. 4 previous cases. All elderly patients, all Memphis families, all dismissed once someone actually looked at the paperwork. Margaret met my eyes. Your family hired him, didn't they? My son and daughter-in-law. They leave Saturday for a Caribbean cruise, my birthday gift to them. $180,000. They plan to file the guardianship petition while I'm unreachable in international waters. Sometimes God's timing is so precise, it stops your breath. The exact person you need has been in your life for decades, just waiting for this moment. I would have lost everything if my attorney hadn't caught it, Margaret said, reaching for a business card from the drawer in the side table. Luther Callahan, that man saved my life. The world tilted slightly. Luther, my friend since seminary. The man who'd stood beside me at Ruth's funeral 35 years ago. Who'd drafted the very trust documents that now protected my assets from Everett's reach. Luther, who'd offered help Monday afternoon in his downtown office. Who'd somehow known I'd need him before I'd known myself. Margaret handed me the card with shaking hands, not knowing I already had his number memorized. The receptionist waved me straight through when I stepped off the elevator at 2 o'clock. Luther's corner office occupied the 42nd floor of the Commerce Square building, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the Mississippi River in afternoon sunlight. My 65-year-old attorney, Luther Callahan, sat across from me behind his mahogany desk with the same protective fire I'd seen. For 3 decades, sharp gray eyes, tailored suit, and the bearing of a man who'd won more courtroom battles than he'd lost. Margaret Hensley called ahead, he said without preamble. Told me I'd be hearing from you today. She also said you looked like hell. Luther, they're trying to have me declared incompetent. The papers are already signed. They file Friday when I'm offshore. He didn't blink. Didn't ask if I was certain. Didn't suggest I might be mistaken. 35 years of friendship meant he knew when I was speaking truth. Start from the beginning, Luther said, pulling a legal pad toward him. Everything. I told him about Monday's text message, Everett's casual exclusion from the family cruise I'd paid for, the structured withdrawals Tuesday night, 3 transactions totaling just under $30,000. Leora's carefully constructed incompetency narrative during her Tuesday visit, her references to confusion and forgetfulness designed to build a documented pattern. The eavesdropping at Everett's window, overhearing their timeline, learning the petition would be filed. Day 3 of the trip, when I'd be unreachable in international waters. Dr. Gerald Hobart signed the mental competency evaluation. I finished. The same doctor who tried to help Margaret's daughter 3 years ago. Luther's pen had stopped moving halfway through my recitation. Now he set it down carefully, like a man controlling his temper through deliberate motion. Hobart, he repeated. Of course it's Hobart. The man's been running this scheme for a decade, taking money from families who want quick guardianships without messy legal battles. I've faced him in court 4 times now. Won every case. Relief flooded through me, warm and steadying. Not just belief, but expertise. Luther had fought this exact battle before and knew how to win. The charity fund withdrawal started 6 months ago, I continued. Small amounts at first, then larger. Ever had legitimate access as administrator, so the bank never questioned it. I only noticed because I review every statement personally. 35 years of friendship meant Luther heard what I wasn't saying, that I'd ignored his warnings because I desperately wanted to believe in my son, that I'd convinced myself Everett's financial ambitions were normal, healthy even, that Leora's influence was something he'd outgrow, that a father's blind hope had nearly cost me everything. The trip was your idea, Luther asked. I nodded. Birthday gift. I suggested the Caribbean cruise, offered to pay for the whole family. They accepted within an hour and had the booking confirmed by that evening. I thought they were being efficient. They were being strategic. Offshore, unreachable, unable to contest the petition. Luther's jaw tightened. By the time you returned, they'd have emergency temporary guardianship, access to your accounts, control of your property. The court appoints a temporary guardian ex parte when the subject is deemed incompetent and unreachable. You'd come home to locked bank accounts and a facility placement order. The hardest thing about being proven right is watching someone you love realize they were wrong to doubt you. I warned you, Vernon. Luther's voice carried no satisfaction, only weary vindication. 5 years ago, when you put Everett in charge of that fund, I told you Leora would see it as a stepping stone to everything else, that giving them access to church money would teach them how easy it was to take yours. You were right, I said quietly. About all of it. Now I need you to help me dismantle this before they can execute. Luther swiveled his chair toward the computer array on his credenza, fingers already flying across the keyboard. His jaw was set in that particular way I recognized from decades of watching him prepare for legal battle. The same expression he'd worn at Ruth's funeral 35 years ago, when he'd promised to protect everything we'd built together. First, we find out exactly what they've filed and when, Luther said, pulling up the Shelby County court system database. Then, we burn it down. Whatever came next. I wouldn't face it alone. The search query ran for 30 seconds that felt like minutes. Then Luther's screen populated with a single entry in the Tennessee court filing system, and the air in his office seemed to compress. Here it is, Luther said quietly. Emergency petition for guardianship. Everett Garrison, petitioner. Vernon Garrison, respondent. I moved around the desk to stand behind his chair, reading over his shoulder. The document header showed a case number, a filing attorney I didn't recognize, and a status that made my blood run cold. Scheduled, pending. Not filed yet. Luther continued, scrolling down through the metadata. Scheduled autofile Friday, 9 a.m. Central Time. You'll be at sea. No phone, no lawyer, no ability to respond until Monday at earliest. The precision was almost beautiful in its cruelty. They'd calculated everything cruise departure Saturday morning. First full day at sea Friday when the filing executed. Offshore St. Lucia, with no cellular coverage, when the court system activated the petition. By the time I could access email or make international calls, the emergency temporary guardianship order would already be in place. Click the attachments, I said. Luther opened the first PDF. Dr. Gerald Hobart's letterhead filled the screen, followed by 3 pages of clinical language describing my supposed cognitive decline. I scanned the evaluation date last Tuesday, the same day I'd discovered the charity fund withdrawals. While I'd been sitting in my study calculating the exact amount stolen, Hobart had been backdating a medical examination we'd never conducted. "Look at the attached medical evaluation," Luther read aloud. "Hobart claims progressive cognitive decline over 6-month observation period, inability to manage complex financial affairs, episodes of confusion and paranoia. Recommends immediate protective custody pending comprehensive neurological assessment." When you see your own name in a court petition requesting your freedom be taken away, something fundamental shifts in how you understand family. This wasn't theft anymore, wasn't even conspiracy. This was erasure, a legal mechanism designed to make me disappear while still breathing, still conscious, still aware of everything being taken. 6-month observation period, I repeated. I haven't seen Hobart in 3 years. Not since he treated me for bronchitis. Doesn't matter. Once the emergency petition files, you get 72 hours to respond. But you'll be unreachable Friday through Sunday. By Monday, when you dock in Fort Lauderdale, the temporary guardian will have access to all your accounts. Authority to make medical decisions. Power to relocate you to supervised housing. Luther scrolled to the proposed guardian designation. Everett's name appeared in bold text, with Leora listed as alternate. The request included immediate authority to secure all financial assets, terminate existing legal arrangements, and place the respondent in appropriate care facility if deemed necessary for safety. The words "protective custody" glowed on the screen, sanitized legal language for what amounted to my son imprisoning me. They'd take my home, my accounts, my independence, all under the legal fiction that they were acting in my best interest, and the court would grant it automatically, because I wouldn't be there to contest. "We need to file an emergency counterpetition," Luther said, already pulling up a blank pleading template. "And join the whole thing. Expose Hobart's fraud. Get ahead of this before Friday." "No." Luther's hands stopped on the keyboard. He turned to look at me, confusion crossing his face. I leaned back from the monitor, hands steady on the leather armrests. The rage I'd felt earlier had crystallized into something colder, harder, more useful. They'd shown me exactly when they planned to strike Friday morning, 9 o'clock. While they believed I was helpless and offshore, "Let them file," I said quietly. "Let them think it worked. Let them get on that ship Saturday morning, believing they've won." Luther understood immediately. His expression shifted from confusion to something darker, more predatory. "We prepare our counterstrike for that exact timing," I continued, staring at the petition on screen. "They want Friday at 9. We'll be ready." Now I knew precisely when to destroy them. Luther leaned forward across his mahogany desk, his voice sharp with urgency. "We file an injunction tomorrow morning. Freeze every account, every asset. Hit them before they can move another dollar. Emergency hearing. Friday, we prevent the Caribbean trip entirely. Force full financial disclosure within 48 hours. Expose Hobart's fraud in open court." He expected me to agree immediately. Instead, I steepled my fingers and said nothing. "Vernon, we have 3 days. 3 days before that petition auto-files and you're legally compromised. We go on offense now. Motion to compel Everett's bank records. Subpoena the charity fund transactions. Depose Leora under oath about her conversations with Hobart. We make them scramble." The strategy was sound, aggressive, comprehensive, designed to overwhelm them with legal firepower before they could consolidate their position. Luther had used similar tactics in dozens of cases. It almost always worked. "And what happens," I asked quietly, "when they know we're coming?" Luther paused. "They lawyer up. Standard procedure. They prepare defenses, file countermotions, delay tactics. Everett hires his own attorney. Leora claims she was just following her husband's lead. Hobart suddenly can't remember specific details without reviewing his notes." I met his eyes. "They turn this into a drawn-out legal battle where everyone's positions harden and nothing gets resolved for months. Better than letting them execute a guardianship conspiracy, is it?" I stood, moving to the window overlooking downtown Memphis. Through the glass, I could hear laughter from the church parking lot, 3 floors below Wednesday evening Bible study letting out. Families heading home together. The sound felt like it belonged to a different world. What if we let them go? Let them, Vernon. They're trying to have you declared incompetent. Let them take the trip, I continued, turning back to face him. Let them board that cruise Saturday morning, believing they've successfully hidden everything. Let them feel safe and victorious while they're isolated on a resort island with limited communication. No immediate legal threats. No emergency hearings. Nothing to make them suspicious. Luther's expression shifted from confusion to something darker. What are you planning? While they're offshore celebrating their betrayal, I'll have unrestricted access to complete the investigation. File comprehensive motions when they cannot immediately respond. Control the narrative without their interference. I returned to the desk, but didn't sit. They'll be trapped on that ship. Vernon. Days from home. Unable to access their attorneys. Unable to coordinate their story. By the time they dock in Fort Lauderdale, everything will already be in motion. This isn't about justice anymore, Luther said carefully. This is revenge. This is strategy. Vernon, I need to know, are you trying to win a legal case or destroy your son? The question hung in the air between us. Luther watched my face, looking for some trace of the grieving father who'd sat in this same office years ago, devastated by Ruth's death, struggling to navigate estate planning through tears. That man was gone. I noticed my hands resting flat on Luther's desk, fingers spread wide, perfectly still. No tremor, no tension. When had that happened? When had grief stopped making me shake? I'm trying to survive, I said finally. They've shown me who they are. I'm simply responding in kind. Luther studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. We'll need to prepare everything in advance. Motions drafted, evidence compiled, witness statements secured. The moment that petition files Friday, we unleash everything simultaneously. Exactly. And you're certain you can maintain the facade, play the wounded father for 3 more days while they make final preparations? I've been playing that role for months without knowing it, I said. A few more days won't matter. Luther stood, extending his hand across the desk. I took it. And something passed between us. An understanding that we'd crossed a line from defensive legal maneuvering into calculated offensive warfare. His grip was firm, professional. Mine was cold, certain. As I stepped into the humid Memphis night, my phone buzzed. A text from Everett. Dad, can we talk before the trip? I hate how things ended. I deleted it without reading it twice. Let him think I was still the forgiving father. Let them both board that plane, feeling victorious. They'd understand what I'd become soon enough, when it was already too late. The Shell Company office sat in a forgettable strip mall on Winchester Road, sandwiched between a tax preparer and a nail salon, exactly where no one from Cornerstone Baptist would think to look for their senior pastor. Dennis Wardle looked up when I entered, surprise crossing his gray-templed face. He ran my Shell Company property operations with professional discretion, mid-50s. Ex-military bearing. The kind of man who understood that some clients needed absolute anonymity. Didn't expect to hear from you this soon. Mr. Harmon, he said, using the name on the LLC paperwork. Timeline changed, I said. I need to activate the prepared sale. The Germantown property escrow. Everything's been ready since March. I know, that's why I hired you. He retrieved a thick manila folder from the filing cabinet. The sparse office contained nothing personal, just filing cabinets, a desk, fluorescent lights humming overhead. Purely functional, purely invisible. Dennis spread documents across the desk. Complete escrow package. Every page prepared months earlier. Deed transfer. Title insurance, buyer agreements already negotiated and signed, waiting for my activation signature. I'd identified the buyer last winter, negotiated terms through Dennis, and staged everything before Leora had mentioned divorce to anyone. $4.8 million, Dennis confirmed. Cash buyer, 48-hour close, just like you specified in February. February. When Everett had first suggested combining the church charity fund with family investments. When Leora started asking careful questions about my estate planning during Sunday dinners. When I'd realized exactly what trajectory they were on. The buyer still ready? I asked. Confirmed yesterday. They've been waiting for your signal since spring. I scanned the closing timeline. Escrow filing Friday morning. Title transfer Monday afternoon. While Leora and Everett celebrated on a Caribbean beach, convinced their conspiracy was proceeding flawlessly, $4.8 million would transfer beyond their reach into accounts they didn't know existed. My wedding ring still circled my finger. I'd forgotten to take it off this morning. The gold band caught the fluorescent light as I turned pages. I twisted it once, then left it. Symbols didn't matter anymore. They think I'm still discovering what they did, I said. They think they're ahead. Dennis waited, hands folded on the desk. And the Caribbean trip? He finally asked. Perfect timing. They'll be offshore when this closes. No way to stop it. No way to contest it. No communication with their attorneys until they dock next Thursday. Dennis slid the activation documents toward me. Single signature line, dated today. The moment I signed, the escrow agent would file Friday morning, and the machinery I'd built months ago would grind forward with legal inevitability. When had I stopped being the trusting husband? March. February. Had there been a specific moment? Or had I simply woken up one morning knowing exactly what they were doing? The transformation had been gradual, then sudden, like ice forming across a pond, until one day you realize it's solid enough to bear weight. I signed. Vernon Harmon's signature, neat and legal, authorized by LLC documents filed 18 months ago when I'd first started building this layer of protection. Execute it, I said. Friday filing, Monday close. Dennis countersigned as witness. Organizing documents into proper folders with practiced efficiency. They won't even know until it's recorded. That's the point. He walked me to the door, pausing before opening it. The Germantown property is just the first one, right? You said there were 3 packages. I nodded. He didn't ask about the other 2. Smart man. He didn't need to know that by the time Everett and Leora landed in Memphis next week, every asset they thought they'd hidden would already be locked down, transferred, or sold. Just give the order, Dennis said quietly, and it closes in 48 hours. I stepped back into the Memphis morning. Just another middle-aged man leaving a strip mall office. Nobody looked twice. Serena appeared at my church office door Thursday afternoon, her 16-year-old hands trembling as she held up her phone. Grandpa, you need to hear what Mom said to Grandma and Grandpa Whitfield. I'd spent the morning activating the property sale with Dennis. Now, my granddaughter stood before me. Fear and determination warring across her face. Come in, I said, closing the door behind her. Sit down. What happened? I was home from school early half-day for teacher meetings. I heard raised voices from the study. She set her phone on my desk like it might explode. Mom was there with her parents. I didn't plan it, I knew something was wrong. So I started recording. My chest tightened. You're safe now. Let me hear it. She pressed play. Leora's voice filled my office, crystal clear through the phone speaker. Judge Matheson signs the temporary orders Friday. Vernon won't even know until it's filed. A male voice responded Clifford Whitfield's smooth confidence, carrying the authority of old Memphis money. Leora's father, a retired investment banker who'd always looked at me like a charity case his daughter had married. And you're certain the Caribbean timing keeps him off balance? Completely. That was Velma Whitfield, Leora's mother. Her junior league polish evident even through phone audio. She'd spent 30 years perfecting the art of appearing gracious while maneuvering for advantage. By the time he has access to an attorney, we'll have moved everything that matters. Serena watched me, gauging my reaction. Grandpa, they're talking about you like you're already gone. I looked at my granddaughter, 16, voice shaking. but eyes absolutely steady. When had she stopped being a child? When had she learned to see through lies I'd believed for years? The recording continued. Clifford again, the German townhouse alone gives you leverage. 4.8 million. He thinks it's untouchable because it's in both names. Leora's laugh carried no warmth. He has no idea. Cold satisfaction spread through my chest. They were planning to seize a property I'd already sold. The escrow would file tomorrow morning, hours before their guardianship petition activated. They'd reach for an asset that no longer existed. When does Everett file the supporting affidavit? Velma asked. Saturday morning, from the airport before we board. Establishes the pattern of concern. Shows he tried to help before taking legal action. Every word was calculated, every timeline precise. They'd choreographed this like a military operation, except they'd done it in front of a 16-year-old girl with a smartphone. Sudden sound on the recording, a floorboard creak. Leora's voice sharpened. Did you hear something? Serena's breathing became audible on the phone mic. Too close, too fast. Rustling sounds fabric against wall. Footsteps retreating. Mother, wait. I thought I heard... Leora's voice grew louder, closer to wherever Serena had been standing. The recording cut off abruptly. My hands had clenched into fists without my noticing. I forced them open, pressed them flat on the desk. Serena was watching me, afraid of my reaction. I made myself breathe. I ran to my room, she whispered. She didn't see me. I locked the door and pretended to be doing homework when she knocked 5 minutes later. You were incredibly brave, I said quietly, and incredibly foolish. If she'd caught you... I know, but Grandpa, I couldn't just... Her voice broke. They're planning to take everything from you. Someone had to do something. I pulled her into a hug, then held her at arm's length. Send me that recording, then delete it from your phone. I need you safe from this. Can you do that? She nodded, fingers already moving across the screen. My phone buzzed with the file transfer 3 minutes. 47 seconds of documented conspiracy. Delete it, I said. All of it. Cloud backup too. She complied, showing me the empty trash folder. I now had their exact timeline. Judge Matheson signing Friday. Temporary orders freezing my accounts. Caribbean timing designed to keep me off balance. Their plan to seize the Germantown property they didn't know I'd already sold. Everett's supporting affidavit filed Saturday morning. They'd handed me everything I needed. And they had no idea my granddaughter had just destroyed them. The doorbell rang at 8:30 Thursday night. Serena stood on my porch, face pale in the streetlight, still gripping her phone like it might explode. She'd sent me the recording hours ago at the church office, then gone home. Now the adrenaline had worn off. Grandpa, I can't stop shaking. Her voice broke. What if Mom had caught me? Come inside, sweetheart. You're safe here. I led her to the living room. The moment we sat down, she started crying silent tears she tried to hide by looking at the floor. 16 years old, and she'd just recorded her own mother conspiring to destroy her grandfather. I keep hearing her voice on that recording, Serena whispered. That's my mom. That's my dad they're talking about destroying. And Grandma and Grandpa Whitfield were just helping, like it was normal. I handed her tissues from the side table and let her cry. This was the difference between calculation and courage. Serena hadn't acted out of strategy. She'd followed instinct, loyalty, a 16-year-old sense that something was terribly wrong. Now, she was paying the emotional price. They said Judge Matheson signs papers tomorrow. She looked up, eyes red. Grandpa, are they going to take your house? Your church? They're going to try, but you gave me something they don't know I have. I recorded my own mother. Fresh tears spilled over. What kind of person does that make me? I moved beside her on the couch, putting my arm around her shoulders. The kind who sees clearly when everyone else is lying. The kind who chooses what's right, even when it's hard. But she's my mom, and I'm your grandfather. And what they're planning is wrong, you know that. Or you wouldn't have recorded it. She looked so much like her father at 16. Same dark eyes, same sharp chin. But where Everett had learned to lie, Serena still believed family meant loyalty. I didn't know whether to protect that innocence or prepare her for the truth. You didn't betray your mother, I said quietly. You saved your grandfather. There's a difference. But she's going to hate me when she finds out. She's never going to know. I pulled back to look at her directly. That recording came from me, not you. I'll protect you from this. No one will ever trace it to you, I promise. How? Because I say so. And because I've been planning longer than they realize. I squeezed her shoulder. But I need you to do something for me. What? Can you be brave one more time? Can you go home and pretend nothing happened? She wiped her eyes. Like you've been doing. Pretending you don't know. Smart girl. Exactly like that. Just until they leave for the Caribbean. Then you'll be safe. How long? Saturday morning they fly out. 2 more days. Can you do that? She nodded slowly. Act normal. Don't let them see anything different. I was asking my granddaughter to become an actress in her own home. To smile at the people plotting to destroy me. I was turning her into what I'd become. The thought should have stopped me. It didn't. I love you, Grandpa. She hugged me tight. I don't care what they say about you. I know who you really are. The words hit harder than expected. I held her close, thinking about the recording on my phone. Her mother's voice detailing exactly how they planned to steal everything I'd built. This frightened 16-year-old had just handed me the weapon that would destroy her parents' lives. Love and vengeance occupying the same moment. You're safe, I promised. I'll make sure of it. I watched her car pull away from the curb, taillights disappearing toward the Germantown estate where Leora and Everett waited, unknowing. My phone felt heavy in my pocket, the recording file sitting there like a loaded gun. Tomorrow, Judge Matheson would sign their papers. By Monday, they'd discover I'd already sold the property they planned to seize. And when they returned from the Caribbean, that recording would be waiting to finish them. Ezra Kendrick appeared in the church records room Friday morning like he always did, quietly, without announcement, holding a manila folder I hadn't asked for. I'd spent the night replaying Serena's recording, memorizing every word. Now, here was Ezra, the administrative assistant who ran Cornerstone's operations with methodical precision, late 40s. Former military intelligence, the kind of man who noticed inconsistencies others missed. Pastor, I handle credentials for the finance committee. He set the folder on the table between us. Your daughter-in-law's company registration. Something's off. I looked up sharply. What kind of off? The kind where someone might have a reason to use their married name instead of their maiden name. He opened the folder, revealing printouts of business registrations. Alabama keeps good records. Leora's Financial Advisory, LLC, filed 4 years ago in Tennessee. But her claims of decade-long expertise had always been part of her professional image. Women into dinner conversations and client meetings. 4 years, I said, under Garrison. But cross-reference checks under her maiden name, Whitfield, in Alabama, show business activity gaps and sealed court records from 8 years prior. My pulse quickened. Sealed records? What kind? The kind that make people change their name and move to Tennessee. I can't access them, but an attorney could. Ezra met my eyes steadily. I thought you might want to know. You're very thorough for a church administrator. He didn't smile. Some patterns demand attention. I brought the folder to Luther's office that afternoon. He made 3 phone calls, legal channels I didn't ask about, and within an hour had Alabama court documents spread across his desk. Insurance fraud, Luther said, sliding the file toward me. She filed false claims on a business fire, collected $80,000. The conviction record was clinical and damning. Leora Whitfield, age 25, Atlanta business address. Guilty plea, 3-year supervised probation, full restitution paid. 8 years ago. I said slowly, before she met Everett. The Whitfield parents never mentioned this when she joined your family. How had I sat across the dinner table from this woman for years, listened to her talk about integrity and family values, never once seen the mask slip? They presented her as Memphis banking royalty, I said. Old family, prestigious connections, natural talent for financial management. Luther turned pages in the file. She was running a struggling Atlanta consulting business when she committed the fraud. Got caught when the insurance company noticed inconsistencies in the claim documentation. She was good. Made it look legitimate for almost 18 months before they investigated. And after probation, moved to Memphis. Her parents had the connections to facilitate the Reinvention Country Club introductions. Carefully constructed resume. All the social proof she needed. She met Everett 3 years after the conviction. The prestigious financial advisor background, all fabricated. Built on her parents' name and the very carefully constructed resume. Luther closed the file. She's been playing a role, and now she's playing another one, the betrayed wife taking what's rightfully hers. Luther slid the conviction photo across the desk. Leora. 8 years younger, different hair, same cold eyes. I'd never really looked at those eyes before. Too busy seeing what she wanted me to see, the devoted daughter-in-law, the competent professional, the concerned family member. A con artist married to your son, Luther said quietly. Running another con, this time on you. I folded the Alabama fraud record and slipped it into my jacket pocket, next to the phone holding Serena's recording. 2 weapons now. The recording proved conspiracy. The conviction proved pattern. Leora had done this before. Committed fraud for money. Built elaborate lies to cover her tracks. She wasn't just betraying me. She'd been running a con from the moment she met Everett. The prestigious background. The financial expertise. The dutiful daughter-in-law act. All of it carefully constructed theater, performed by someone who'd already proven she'd lie, cheat, and steal when money was at stake. So my daughter-in-law is playing a role too, I said, standing to leave. Just like everyone else in this family, including me. The first Instagram post appeared at 7:30 Friday morning. Leora at Memphis International's business class counter, arm around Everett. Caption reading, celebrating Dad Vernon's incredible generosity. 30 years of faithful ministry deserves this family blessing. I sat in my study holding 2 weapons, Serena's recording and Leora's fraud conviction, watching their performance unfold in real time. More posts flooded my feed within minutes. Leora, posing with expensive luggage. Designer sunglasses pushed up in her hair, radiating excitement. So blessed by Pastor Vernon's heart for family. This trip celebrates everything he's built. Every word carefully chosen. Every photo strategically framed. Celebrating with money you think you're about to steal. Everett's Facebook post showed him at the check-in counter, looking solemn and grateful. Grateful for a father who puts family first. Love you, Dad. The hypocrisy should have enraged me. Instead, I felt cold amusement. They were documenting their own lies, building a digital trail of fake devotion that would make their betrayal even more damning when I exposed it. By 8:15, the Whitfield parents had joined the social media performance. Clifford posted a selfie at the gate. Velma beside him, wearing pearls for a domestic flight. Finnegan Whitfield appeared in the background of several photos. Leora's younger brother, 32, perpetually unemployed, always ready to accept someone else's generosity without asking questions. He'd tagged along for the free vacation like he'd tagged along for everything else in life. Velma's Facebook caption read, "Our wonderful son-in-law Vernon made this family celebration possible." Son-in-law. She couldn't even keep the lie straight. I was Everett's father, which made me Leora's father-in-law. Not the Whitfield's son-in-law. But accuracy didn't matter in performance. Only the appearance of gratitude. Finnegan's Twitter was more honest in its shamelessness. Uncle Vernon's generosity game is strong, Caribbean bound. I scrolled back through Leora's feed. Years of posts. Loving daughter-in-law, devoted to family, supportive of ministry. Had any of it ever been real? Had she been running this con for our entire relationship? Or had something shifted along the way I'd never know? The mask had been perfect. In the background of one gate photo, I spotted Serena. While everyone else smiled at the camera, she stood apart, staring at her phone, face carefully blank. My granddaughter. The only one who'd chosen loyalty over complicity. At 9 o'clock, the boarding posts began. Leora filmed herself in the first-class cabin. Champagne already poured, voice breathy with excitement. Vernon literally insisted we take this trip. Said family unity matters more than anything. We're so blessed by his sacrificial love. Everett posted a photo raising his glass, Memphis visible through the airplane window behind him. To the man who taught me everything about integrity and honor. Cheers, Dad. Integrity. From the sun trying to steal my church. My coffee had gone cold on the desk beside me. I hadn't moved in 30 minutes. Just watched their performance unfold frame by frame. Every smile captured. Every lie documented. They were building my case for me. The final post came at 9:45. Everett's photo showed the plane ascending over Memphis, wing cutting through morning clouds. See you in a week, Memphis, Dad. We'll come back ready to serve alongside you, stronger than ever. Then silence. They'd gone offline. Unreachable at 35,000 feet. I checked my watch. 9:45 a.m. They were airborne, celebrating with champagne they'd bought with money they planned to steal, believing they'd executed the perfect trap. Enjoy your champagne, son, I said to the empty study. It's the last thing you'll celebrate for a very long time. 7 days. 7 days before they landed back in Memphis. 7 days of them unreachable while I moved every piece into position. I closed the social media tabs and opened my encrypted file folder, Serena's recording. Leora's fraud conviction. The Shell Company property sale documents. Luther's research notes. Everything ready. Everything waiting. I picked up the phone and called Luther. They're airborne, I said when he answered. Execute phase 2. Luther had the documents ready when I arrived at his office 40 minutes after the plane took off. Crisp legal paper, already drafted, just waiting for my signature and a notary's stamp. Cornerstone Community Charity Fund revocation, Luther said, spreading the pages across his desk. You established the fund in your name as founder trustee. Everett was never a co-trustee, just a designated manager. I scanned the first page. My name alone appeared in the trustee section. Ever's role was listed under authorized manager, revocable at trustee discretion. So I can revoke his access without his signature. Without his signature, without notice, without his consent. Luther tapped the document. It's your fund. You were generous. Now you're not. $800,000 in donated assets. 3 years of Everett managing church outreach programs, community partnerships, charitable giving. I'd added his name to those accounts with pride, my son. Stepping into ministry leadership, managing the church's charitable giving, now I was erasing him with a pen stroke. The symmetry felt like poetry. Dark poetry. He's been using this fund for church outreach programs, I said. What happens to those? They continue under your direct authorization, or they don't. Your choice. I thought about the youth center renovation Everett had funded last year. The homeless ministry van purchased 6 months ago. Legitimate charitable work. All of it. But funded through authority I'd granted. Authority I could revoke. He'll know I'm moving against him the moment he discovers this, I said. Luther met my eyes. He's 35,000 feet over Georgia right now, drinking champagne. By the time he discovers this, you'll have moved 6 more pieces into position. That's the point of the timing. The office door opened. Hello. Fletcher had been notarizing documents in Memphis for 23 years, late 50s, reading glasses on a chain. The kind of professional who made legal formalities feel both routine and deeply serious. She set her notary seal and stamp book on Luther's desk with practiced efficiency. "Mr. Garrison," she smiled politely, then became all business. "I'll need to see your identification and confirm a few things before we proceed." I handed her my driver's license. She compared the photo to my face, wrote down the license number, then arranged the revocation documents in order. "Mr. Garrison, do you sign this document of your own free will, without coercion?" "Completely free will. And you understand this revokes all previously granted management authorities over the Cornerstone Community Charity Fund." "I understand completely." She walked me through each page, watching me initial the margins, sign the required sections. The formality made it feel like a funeral, burying the relationship with my son, one signature at a time. When I reached the final page, Helen positioned her notary stamp carefully over the signature block. "This action is irreversible once notarized and filed with the bank," she said. "Are you certain?" I thought about Serena's recording, Leora's fraud conviction, the guardianship petition waiting to file, the property they planned to seize that I'd already sold. "I'm certain." The notary's stamp slammed down with a heavy metallic thud, solid brass. The seal cut deep into the paper. Official. Irreversible. Done. The stamp was heavier than I expected when Helen let me hold it afterward. A small thing that carried the weight of law. I understood why she'd slammed it down so hard. Luther immediately scanned the document and pulled up his email. "First Tennessee Bank, Trust Department," he said, attaching the file. "They'll process this within the hour." His phone chimed 3 minutes later. He read the message, then looked up. "Bank confirms receipt. Everett's access is terminated." $800,000, I said quietly. Back under my sole control. Helen packed her stamp and logbook, collected her fee, and left with a polite nod. The door clicked shut behind her. Luther pulled a second folder from his desk drawer, thicker than the first, multiple documents visible inside. "One down," he said. "What's next?" He slid the folder across the desk. The tab label read, "Germantown Estate, Lien and Encumbrance." I'd almost forgotten about that one. I unlocked my phone and opened the First Tennessee banking app while Luther watched. The shared ministry fund account appeared on screen, showing a balance of $1,247,863.42. Luther's eyebrows rose. 1.2 million? That's not church money. Personal earnings I channeled through ministry over the years. Speaker fees, book royalties, honorariums. I turned the screen toward him. "Everett has access. So do I." Joint account. Joint tenancy. 5 years. We used it for ministry discretionary expenses, emergency benevolence, unbudgeted outreach, things that needed immediate funding without committee approval. Luther took the phone, scrolling through recent transactions. "And you wants to empty it before he realizes you're moving against him." "Can I?" He handed the phone back. "Joint tenancy with right of survivorship means either party can transact independently. No signature requirements. No transfer limits. No notice obligation." He met my eyes. "You can legally drain every dollar right now. Everett would have no recourse except civil litigation later." I stared at the number on the screen. Over $1 million that Everett probably assumed would still be there when he needed it. Maybe he'd already planned to use it. To move it. To hide it before I discovered what they were doing. If I transfer it all right now, can he stop it? Not while he's 30,000 feet over the Atlantic. Not even if he were standing here. Luther leaned forward. "But Vernon, this is the line, isn't it? Once you do this, there's no pretending, it's just defensive moves." Was this who I'd become? A man who could drain over $1 million from his own son's access without flinching. The question should have stopped me. 6 months ago, it would have. Not anymore. "They declared war when they plotted to take my church," I said. "I'm just finally fighting back. Defensive legal strategy is one thing. This is different. This is war. I thought about Serena's recording Leora's voice, detailing exactly when they'd file the guardianship petition, how they'd freeze my assets while maintaining their own control. I thought about the social media posts this morning, their fake gratitude and manufactured devotion. I thought about Everett raising a champagne glass to integrity and honor while planning to destroy me. The hesitation evaporated. Once you press that button, you become the aggressor, Luther warned. You sure you want to be that person? I tapped Transfer All Funds and selected my new personal account, the one only I controlled, the one they didn't know existed. The confirmation screen appeared, asking me to verify $1,247,863.42. I tapped Confirm. The processing circle spun for 3 seconds that felt like 3 minutes. Then the screen updated. Transfer complete. New balance $0. 00. The phone screen glowed in my hand like a weapon I'd been holding all along without realizing it. Modern warfare didn't need lawyers and courtrooms, just Wi-Fi and ruthlessness. Done, I said, setting the phone on Luther's desk. $1.2 million, gone from his reach in 3 seconds. Luther exhaled slowly. He'll check that account from the resort, probably tonight. He'll see 0. He'll know you're moving against him. Good. I picked up the phone again, the screen still showing that perfect $0 balance. Let him know. Let him spend the whole vacation panicking about what else I've done while he's been gone. He'll call you, furious, demanding explanations. Then I guess he'll have to leave a voicemail. I enabled Do Not Disturb mode and watched the crescent moon icon appear in the status bar. Every call from Everett's number would now go straight to voicemail. Every text would arrive silently, unread, until I decided otherwise. Luther leaned back in his chair, studying me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not disapproval, exactly. Something closer to recognition. You've crossed it, he said quietly. The line between protecting yourself and destroying them. They crossed it first when they decided to steal my church. I stood, pocketing my phone. I'm just making sure they regret it. The charity fund. The shared account. $2 million removed from Everett's control in less than 3 hours. And I wasn't finished. Dennis Wardle met me at the Shell Company office Friday evening, unlocking the door as the sun set over Winchester Road. Inside, a man in an expensive suit waited beside a briefcase full of paperwork. Mr. Harmon, this is Mercer Ashford. Dennis made the introduction. The buyer we discussed in March. Mercer Ashford ran a commercial property development consortium early 50s. Tailored suit. The kind of investor who specialized in rapid acquisitions and didn't ask uncomfortable questions about motivated sellers. Mr. Harmon, I've been patient since spring. Dennis says you're ready to activate the sale. $4.8 million, cash. 48-hour close, I said. Terms still acceptable. My cashier's check is already cut. I just need your signature and the keys. Dennis spread the documents across the desk, everything prepared months ago, just waiting for this moment. The title work shows joint ownership with Leora Garrison, Mercer said. I need assurance you can convey clear title. The marital property agreement gives me sole disposition authority. Luther Callahan verified it. Then we have no issues. When can you deliver vacant possession? I was selling the house where Everett grew up, where Leora had hosted church dinners and played the devoted daughter-in-law. Every Christmas photo, every family memory about to be boxed up by strangers. That's addressed in the special conditions, I said. Page 7. Mercer flipped to the clause, reading carefully. His eyebrows rose. Before I reveal what that clause really meant, are you still with me? Comment A if you think Vernon's going too far, or B if you think this is justified, and add one brief reason. Please note, some details ahead are adapted for storytelling. The lesson is what I hope stays with you. The as-is clause includes immediate contents removal. I said. Your crew starts Monday after closing. You want the house cleared in 48 hours. That's aggressive. That's the deal. Everything removed, cataloged, placed in storage, just emptied completely. Mercer studied me. He'd done this before, cleared foreclosed properties, evicted families, stripped homes to bare walls. The personal devastation didn't concern him, just the timeline and the money. My crew can strip a property in 36 hours. Furniture, personal items, kitchen contents, everything. I want photos documenting every item removed. Complete inventory. Standard practice. Mercer pulled a business card from his wallet. My crew arrives at the property at dawn Monday. By Tuesday night, the house will be empty. Dennis produced the signature pages. I signed as Vernon Harmon. Mercer countersigned. Dennis witnessed. We shook hands. His grip was firm, cold, professional. The handshake of a man who'd cleared foreclosed properties before. He didn't care about the devastation, just the timeline and the money. My cashier's check will be waiting at the title company Monday morning, Mercer said, collecting his briefcase. Pleasure doing business. I watched his Mercedes pull away into the Memphis night, tail lights disappearing down Winchester Road. In 72 hours, Everett and Leora's home would be an empty shell, their possessions in storage somewhere. And they'd still be sipping cocktails on a Caribbean beach, completely unaware. My phone buzzed 6 missed calls from Everett's number, all blocked by Do Not Disturb. 3 voicemails waiting. I silenced it without listening. Dennis locked the office. The other properties? He asked quietly. Next week, I said. Let's see how Monday goes first. I drove home through Friday evening traffic, past churches letting out, past families heading to dinner, past the normal life I used to recognize. The charity fund, the shared account, the Germantown property. 3 moves in one day. $2 million removed from Everett's control. 1 home sold out from under them. And I still had 4 more days before they came back. The doorbell rang at 9:15 Friday night. Ezra Kendrick stood on my porch holding a leather messenger bag, his expression completely different from the deferential church administrator mask he usually wore. I'd just returned home from the property sale. 6 missed calls from Everett, still unanswered. Now here was Ezra, looking like someone I'd never actually met. We can drop the pretense now, he said when I closed the door. You've made your move. So I'm making mine. I studied his face, the quiet administrator suddenly standing straighter, speaking with different authority, eyes sharp instead of deferential. 6 months, I said slowly. You've been embedded at the church for 6 months. You hired me in February when you first suspected something was wrong. Ezra set the messenger bag on my coffee table. I've been documenting everything since February. When Leora started acting distant and Everett began questioning church finances too aggressively, when I'd noticed small inconsistencies, conversations that stopped when I entered rooms, I knew something was wrong in February, I said. I just didn't know how deep it went. Deep enough that I've filled 3 surveillance drives and 200 pages of documentation. Ezra opened the bag. The Alabama fraud conviction, the Whitfield LLC, the hidden accounts, all confirmed through independent investigation. You brought me that evidence deliberately. You hired me to investigate. I investigated. He pulled out thick folders, USB drives, labeled documentation, bank records showing Leora's shell accounts, photos of meetings with Judge Matheson's clerk, phone records proving Everett's been planning this since March, for 6 months. I'd watched Ezra play the quiet church administrator, filing paperwork and running background checks. Had anyone else known? Had Leora ever suspected the man organizing her finance committee credentials was documenting her fraud? How much of what they planned did you document? All of it. Ezra spread the folders across my coffee table. Every conversation I could record legally, every transaction I could trace, every lie cross-referenced against truth. Everything you need to finish this. I picked up one folder, photographs of Leora meeting with her parents at the country club. timestamps from April through June. Another contained bank statements with highlighted transfers matching exactly what I'd discovered in the charity fund. Luther knows about this. Luther and I coordinated everything. Every piece of evidence is authenticated and admissible. Ezra pulled out a final USB drive. He's known from the start. We've been preparing your counterattack for 6 months. You just activated it today. I looked at the files spread across my coffee table. 6 months of my life reduced to evidence folders and USB drives. 6 months of pretending I didn't know, couldn't see, wasn't preparing. The performance had been exhausting. What's on that drive? Video from the Whitfield estate last Tuesday. Leora and Everett celebrating their plan with champagne, toasting to your destruction. He set it down carefully. I thought you'd want to see their faces when they thought they'd won. I didn't pick it up. I already knew what their victory celebration looked like. They'd posted it all over social media this morning, raising champagne glasses in first class, praising my generosity while planning my destruction. Everything's organized chronologically, Ezra said, standing to leave. Financial documents first, then surveillance, then communications. Luther has copies. When you're ready to move, it's court ready. He paused at the door. They think they've been so careful, he said quietly. They have no idea I've been 3 steps ahead since February. We've been 3 steps ahead, I corrected. You, Luther, and me. Ezra smiled, the first genuine expression I'd seen from him in 6 months. Everything you need to finish this is in that bag. Use it well. I locked the door behind him and returned to the coffee table, looking at 6 months of systematic preparations spread across the surface. The charity fund revocation, the drained accounts, the property sale. Those weren't desperate defensive moves. Those were the execution of a plan 6 months in the making. The satellite phone call came through at 7:30 Saturday morning, the connection crackling with static and desperation. Everett's voice cutting in and out, but the panic coming through crystal clear. I'd slept well. Ezra's evidence folders were organized on my desk, Luther's strategy notes beside them. I let the phone ring 4 times before answering, sipping my coffee. Dad, finally! Everett's voice was frantic over the weak connection. The card's not working. The resort they declined it at check-in. Can you call First Tennessee? I set my coffee down slowly. Which card? We have several accounts. The ministry discretionary account, the one we always use for church travel. Static crackled. Something's wrong with the system. Can you call them? We're stuck here. Stuck. They ran the card in front of everyone. His voice rose. The concierge. Other guests. It was humiliating. 3 times. Called the bank. Insufficient funds. That's impossible. I took another sip of coffee. The morning sun was streaming through my kitchen window, warming the room. Perfect Saturday morning. How much were you trying to charge? The VIP suite package, $12,000 for the week. But there should be over $1 million in that account. Panic made his words tumble together. Dad, the Whitfields are furious. Leora's mortified. They're asking us to move to standard rooms or provide alternative payment. I could picture it perfectly. Everett, standing at that gleaming resort desk, Leora beside him in designer clothes. The Whitfields watching as their prestigious facade crumbled over a declined credit card. The image was almost as satisfying as the reality. Everett, I said slowly, why are you charging a personal vacation to church funds? The line went silent, except for static. You approved this, he stammered. You said we should celebrate as a family. You insisted we take this trip. I suggested a modest trip. My voice was calm, measured. I don't recall authorizing $12,000 in ministry money for VIP suites. Dad, that account is for ministry discretionary expenses. Exactly. Ministry expenses, not luxury resort packages. I let the words hang in the static-filled air. Did you classify this as church business when you made the reservation? Another long pause. We can discuss this when I get back, Everett said, his voice shifting to conciliation. Right now. I just need you to transfer some funds. Any funds. We're stuck here without— I've been thinking about what the council said. I interrupted him gently. About me needing distance from financial stress. What, Dad? This isn't the time. They suggested I step back from financial oversight. Let younger leadership handle money matters. I could hear him breathing hard over the connection. Maybe they're right. I've carried these burdens for 30 years. Perhaps it's time to rest. Everett's voice through the static sounded like he was drowning, reaching up from deep water for a hand that used to pull him to safety. I kept both my hands wrapped around my coffee mug. Dad, please, just call the bank, transfer some funds. We can sort this out when I get back. Maybe counsel was right, I said quietly. I need rest from money worries. The satellite connection died with a sharp click. Either Everett hung up in shock or the call dropped. I set the phone down and turned back to my breakfast outside my window. Saturday morning was bright and clear. Across town, Mercer Ashford's crew would be preparing equipment for Monday's estate clearance. I had a sermon to write for tomorrow. Life, as they say, goes on. The encrypted message arrived at 2:15 Saturday afternoon. While I was reviewing my sermon notes, a photo attachment from Marcus Sterling. The field investigator Ezra had positioned at the St. Lucia Resort, former FBI surveillance specialist, now freelance. Expert at blending into luxury environments while documenting everything. The photo showed Leora and the Whitfields mid-argument in the resort lobby, other guests openly staring. I'd spent the morning writing tomorrow's sermon on accountability. Now here was accountability manifesting in real time, 3,000 miles away. Marcus's text report was clinical and precise. Whitfield Sr. confronted subject in lobby 1:45 p.m. Quote, "You said Vernon was unaware. You said the funds were secure." I zoomed in on the photo. Clifford Whitfield's face was red. One finger pointed at Leora's chest. Velma stood beside him, arms crossed, expression glacial. Other resort guests had stopped mid-conversation to watch. Velma Whitfield demanded separate accommodations. Marcus's next message read, quote, "We will not be associated with this disaster." Even her own parents abandon ship the moment the money disappears. Another message followed 30 minutes later. Clifford Whitfield told concierge, quote, "My daughter assured us this was properly arranged. Clearly, it was not. All three Whitfields checked into standard rooms under their own names. Subject and Everett Garrison remain in original accommodation alone." I could picture Clifford making those comments loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Deliberate public distancing from Leora's failure. The prestigious Memphis Whitfields. So loyal until the credit cards stopped working. How long had the Whitfield parents been waiting for an excuse to distance themselves from Leora? Had they ever truly believed in her? Scheme? Or were they just opportunists riding along as long as the money looked secure? Marcus sent an evening update at 7:45. Audio file attached. Listening device in subject's room captured argument between subject and Everett Garrison at 6:30 p.m. Relevant segment extracted. I downloaded the file and pressed play. Leora's voice came through first, high and panicked. "I saw the envelope. In his desk drawer. Bank documents. Asset transfers." He was already moving money. What envelope? Everett sounded confused. When? 2 weeks ago. Leora was crying now. "I knew we had to move faster or he'd hide everything. That's why I pushed Judge Matheson to expedite." I stopped the recording and sat back. 2 weeks ago. I'd deliberately left a First Tennessee folder on my desk with generic asset transfer forms visible inside. Standard bank paperwork, nothing specific. Just enough to look suspicious if someone was already paranoid. The envelope had been simple bait, positioned perfectly on my desk. Knowing Leora rifled through my study when I was at church, she'd taken it exactly as predicted. Let her fear override her caution, and rushed into mistakes. I resumed the recording. "If I'd waited, he would have moved everything offshore." Leora's voice was breaking. "The envelope proved he knew." I had no choice but to act fast. There it was. Confession that she'd accelerated the legal action, pushed for the immediate Caribbean trip, filed the guardianship petition early, all because of perceived threat. All because of an envelope I'd planted specifically to trigger that exact response. I composed an email to Luther, attaching the audio file. Audio attached. Subject admits accelerating legal action based on perceived threat, proving premeditated intent to seize assets. His reply came within minutes. This is motive evidence. She just confessed to conspiracy on tape. I set the phone down and looked out at the Memphis evening. The sun was setting orange and gold over the city. Tomorrow I'd preach about consequences and accountability from Galatians. A man reaps what he sows. Monday. Mercer's crew would empty the Germantown estate while Leora and Everett were still trapped at that resort with frozen accounts and fractured family alliances. And sometime next week, they'd come home to discover they'd destroyed themselves. Not because I'd attacked them, but because I'd given them exactly enough rope and waited for them to tie the knot. 3 white box trucks rumbled down the Germantown estate's circular driveway at 6:45 Monday morning, and I watched from my car 2 blocks away as 15 workers in matching gray coveralls climbed out and approached the front door. Mercer had already unlocked. I'd preached yesterday about consequences. Today, those consequences manifested in industrial dollies and moving equipment. Through binoculars, I watched Mercer coordinate from the driveway with clipboard and headset, directing teams into different wings of the house. The operation was military precise. No wasted motion, no hesitation. The property closing had completed at 8 a.m. Mercer wasn't wasting a minute. I texted him. Everything gets documented. Every item photographed and inventoried. His reply came immediately. Already streaming to cloud storage. You'll have complete visual record. Within 30 minutes, furniture began appearing on the front lawn. Designer sofa, $8,000 dining table, Leora's antique hutch she'd inherited from her grandmother, family photos in expensive frames stacked in boxes on the grass. The crew worked with conveyor belt efficiency, room by room, emptying the entire house contents to the curb. Nothing was treated as precious. Nothing was handled with care. It was all just inventory items to be documented, removed, disposed of. I texted Mercer again. The children's bedrooms. Everything. Clothes, toys, books, furniture. Complete clearance per contract. Serena's things. Everett's childhood memorabilia Leora had saved. All of it piled on the lawn like garbage waiting for collection. At 8 o'clock, one of Mercer's crew hammered a large cardboard sign into the front lawn. Free to take all items. Within minutes, neighbors emerged from houses, phones out, photographing the spectacle. A woman I recognized from church, Sarah Brennan, always friendly to Leora, was loading Serena's bedroom furniture into her SUV. She had no idea those were my granddaughter's things, just free furniture from a neighborhood giveaway. My phone buzzed with Facebook notifications. I'd joined the Germantown Neighborhood Watch Group months ago under a fake profile, just to monitor. First post. OMG, the Garrison house is being emptied. Everything free on the curb. What happened? Second post. 8 minutes later. Just grabbed a gorgeous dining set from the Garrison place. Why are they giving it all away? Third post, with photos. Anyone know what's going on? Entire house being cleared out by moving crew. By noon, half of Memphis would know something catastrophic had happened to Everett and Leora. I watched through binoculars as more people arrived. Neighbors, opportunists, someone with a pickup truck loading an entire bedroom set. The free sign worked exactly as Mercer had predicted. People took everything, and they documented it all on social media. By 9:30, the house was completely empty. The crew had stripped it to bare walls, hollow rooms echoing with footsteps. What neighbors hadn't claimed was being loaded into trucks for donation. The empty house looked like a skeleton picked clean, windows dark and hollow. 3 days ago, It had been their fortress, their proof of success. Now, it was just another vacant property waiting for demolition. Mercer himself walked to the front lawn, carrying a large professional real estate sign. I watched him position it carefully, then drive the metal stakes deep into the grass with a sledgehammer. For sale. Sold. My phone buzzed with his text. Property cleared. Inventory complete. 847 items cataloged, photographed, removed. Sold. Sign posted. I replied, current owners aware, former owners. And no, they're still in the Caribbean according to my timeline. Won't know until they come home. I took one final photo on my phone, the sold sign in the foreground. The empty curb behind it where thousands of dollars in furniture had sat hours earlier. The hollow mansion windows reflecting morning sun. Then I drove away. My phone buzzed with a notification, Marcus Sterling's update from St. Lucia. Leora had just tried to check out early and discovered the resort wouldn't release them without payment in full. They were trapped. Luther's call came through at 10:15 Monday morning while I was driving away from the Germantown estate. I'm at Federal Courthouse. Judge Blackwell just took the bench. You need to hear this in real time. I pulled into a church parking lot 2 blocks away, hands gripping the steering wheel. 6 months of planning. 6 months of pretending I didn't know, all coming to legal fruition in what Luther promised would be a 10-minute hearing. Keep the line open, I said. Luther's voice dropped to a whisper. Judge Patricia Blackwell is reviewing the pre-filed petition now. Leora's attorney is here, but she's not. Judge just asked where Mrs. Garrison is. I could hear muffled courtroom sounds. Luther's breathing. Her attorney says she's traveling. Unreachable, Luther whispered. Then a woman's voice, sharp and judicial. Unreachable. For a guardianship hearing, she filed as urgent, Counselor Callahan. You have counter-evidence. Judge Patricia Blackwell had presided over federal guardianship matters for 22 years, with a reputation for zero tolerance for fraud. Luther had chosen his forum carefully. Your Honor, Luther's voice came through clearly now, addressing the court. I have 6 months of documented evidence showing this petition is fraudulent and part of an asset seizure conspiracy. Silence on the line. Then, rustling papers. Luther whispered again. She's taking the binder, looking at Exhibit 1, Ezra's surveillance timeline. More silence. I sat in the parking lot, engine off, phone pressed to my ear. She's listening to Serena's recording now. Luther breathed. The part where Leora discusses seizing your assets with her parents. Judge Blackwell's voice again, louder. This recording is authenticated. The speakers are identified as Mrs. Garrison and her parents. Yes, Your Honor. Voice analysis completed by licensed expert. Chain of custody documented. And this Alabama conviction. Insurance fraud. 8 years ago. 3-year probation. Mrs. Garrison reinvented herself after moving to Memphis. Married the petitioner's son under false pretenses. I heard papers turning. Luther's breathing. The clock in my dashboard showed 10:32 a.m. She's reading Marcus Sterling's Caribbean reports, Luther whispered. The confession about the envelope. Vernon. Her face, she's not happy. Then Judge Blackwell's voice, cold and final. This petition is dismissed with prejudice. Mr. Garrison's rights are fully affirmed. Relief flooded through me, warm and validating. But Luther's next whisper made me sit up straighter. She's not done. She's asking about the prior fraud conviction and whether this constitutes pattern behavior. Judge Blackwell spoke again. And Luther held the phone so I could hear, Counselor, your client attempted to defraud the court using falsified competency concerns. That's not a civil matter. Leora's attorney tried to respond, but the judge cut him off. Had Leora imagined this outcome when she filed that petition? Had she pictured me declared incompetent? Her controlling my church and assets. She'd never considered I might have my own attorney, my own evidence, my own plan. Vernon, Luther whispered urgently. She just ordered criminal referral to federal prosecutors. This is beyond civil now. Judge Blackwell's voice rang through the phone. I'm referring this matter to the U.S. Attorney for investigation of conspiracy and fraud upon this court. Counselor Callahan, please provide copies of all evidence to prosecutors. They wanted to use the legal system to destroy me, I said quietly into the phone. Now, the legal system is coming for them. Luther's footsteps echoed as he stepped into the courthouse hallway. The U.S. Attorney's Office wants to meet with us this afternoon. They're very interested in the Alabama fraud conviction combined with this attempted guardianship fraud pattern behavior, Vernon. They're talking about federal conspiracy charges with prison time. My phone buzzed with another notification. Marcus Sterling's update from St. Lucia. I opened it while Luther was still on the line. Resort management informed subjects at 11 a.m. local time they are holding passports until $17,000 bill is settled in full. Subjects became agitated, demanded to speak with embassy. Resort security now involved. $17,000. The VIP suite package they'd tried to charge to my drained ministry account, now due in cash they didn't have. Luther, I said, set up the meeting with prosecutors. I'll bring everything. We were reviewing the U.S. Attorney meeting agenda in Luther's office Monday afternoon when his cell phone rang. He glanced at the screen, frowned, and answered, "This is unexpected. Let me put you on speaker." I'd just left the federal courthouse. Guardianship petition dismissed, criminal referrals filed. Now Luther was setting his phone on the desk between us. "Counselor," a professional female voice came through. "Your client, Vernon Garrison, you're aware his daughter-in-law is currently under IRS investigation." Luther's eyes met mine. "I'm not. When did this begin?" 8 months ago. Tax evasion, structuring deposits, fraudulent business deductions, Treasury Department criminal investigation, ongoing since January. Before I'd even known about the betrayal, before I'd hired Ezra, before any of my 6-month plan had begun. "We're calling as a courtesy," the contact continued. "The guardianship case you're handling intersects with our investigation. We wanted to coordinate with the U.S. Attorney's Office on the fraud referral." Luther pulled a legal pad toward him. "What exactly are you investigating?" "Leora Garrison's financial advisory company. She's been structuring cash deposits below reporting thresholds, fabricating business expenses, hiding client fees from tax returns. For how long? Our investigation covers 3 years of returns. Estimated tax liability north of $400,000, plus penalties and potential criminal charges." I sat back in my chair. $400,000 in tax evasion, while she'd been planning to steal my assets. The IRS had been quietly building a case against her. Had Leora known she was already being investigated when she filed the guardianship petition? Had she been that desperate, that reckless, trying to grab my assets before IRS froze everything she owned? "When did you first contact her?" Luther asked. "We subpoenaed her business records in March," the contact said. "Her accountant received the request March 14th. 2 weeks later, she filed a guardianship petition against her father-in-law. March. The timeline clicked into place. Leora had accelerated her plan, not because of the envelope I'd planted, that was just confirmation. She'd accelerated because IRS investigators were closing in. She wasn't just stealing from me, I said quietly. She was running from the IRS. "The guardianship appears to be an asset-hiding attempt," the contact confirmed. "Seize control of clean family assets before we could freeze her business accounts. We're coordinating with the U.S. Attorney on your fraud referral now. The pattern behavior is significant." Luther wrote notes rapidly. "What's your timeline?" IRS. Criminal investigation indictment recommendation goes to DOJ next month. The guardianship fraud just adds to the pattern. Tax evasion, fraud, conspiracy. She's looking at substantial prison time, even without your case. I'd spent 6 months planning her destruction, hiring investigators, planting bait, executing systematic revenge. And the entire time, the federal government was already building a case that would have destroyed her anyway. Thank you for the courtesy notification, Luther said. Of course. We'll be in touch with the U.S. Attorney's Office to coordinate charging documents. The call ended. Luther set his phone down and looked at me with an expression somewhere between amazement and irony. Vernon, he said slowly, even if you did nothing, she was already doomed. The words hung in the air. My elaborate plan. Ezra's surveillance, the envelope, bait, the drained accounts, the sold property, all of it had been salt in a wound that was already fatal. $400,000 in tax liability. Luther continued. Federal evasion charges. Prison time, likely even without the guardianship fraud. She was already caught. Your revenge plan was just redundant. My phone buzzed. Marcus Sterling's update from St. Lucia. I opened it. Subject: Everett Garrison observed at Paradise Jewelers 2:15 p.m. local time. Pawned diamond engagement ring. Received $4,200 US. Appeared distressed. Security footage attached. Even her ring was gone now. I showed Luther the message. He read it and shook his head. They're trapped, he said. Financially, legally, literally. The resort won't release them. The IRS is waiting. Federal prosecutors are building conspiracy charges, and their home is sold and empty. Good, I said quietly. The satellite call came through at 8:40 Monday evening. Everett's voice raw and broken. Leora's sobbing audible in the background. Resort lobby noise echoing through the connection. Dad, please, we need help. They're evicting us. Please. I'd spent the afternoon with federal prosecutors. Now, my son was begging. The accounts are empty. The cards don't work. I don't understand what happened. His words tumbled together, desperate. Can you call the bank? Wire us money, something. We're sitting in the lobby with our luggage. They won't give us our passports. Leora's parents won't help. Dad, please. I let the silence stretch. Let him hear nothing but static and his wife crying. I can explain exactly what happened, I said finally. Would you like me to? Yes, please, Dad. Just fix this. We need to come home. There's nothing to fix, Everett. Everything worked exactly as I planned it. Silence. Then, what? I drained the accounts Friday while you were in the air. $1.2 million you'll never touch. You what? How did you even know? How did I know about your plan to have me declared incompetent? My voice was ice. How did I know about the guardianship petition you and Leora filed? How did I know about the conspiracy to seize my assets? Dad, I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. Not now. I've known everything since the beginning. Since Leora filed that fraudulent petition. Since you plotted with her parents to steal my church. I heard Leora's voice in the background, sharp and panicked. What's he saying, Everett? What's he saying? My son couldn't answer her. He was finally understanding what I'd become. The guardianship petition was dismissed this morning, I continued. With prejudice, the judge referred it to federal prosecutors for criminal conspiracy investigation. You'll be charged when you land. That's not we weren't trying to. Ezra Kendrick, I said, letting the name hang in the air. The quiet administrator who ran background checks at Cornerstone. Do you remember him? What does Ezra? He's been my private investigator for 6 months. Everything you and Leora discussed. Every meeting with her parents. Every transaction. Every lie. He documented. All of it. Voice recordings. Photographs. Financial records. I have everything. Everett. Including your wife's confession on tape. The silence that followed was absolute. That's not possible. Everett whispered. He worked for the church. He worked for me. I hired him in February when I first suspected what you were planning. He's been 3 steps ahead of you since March. Leora's sobbing intensified. I could picture them in that resort lobby, expensive luggage surrounding them, other guests staring, their entire world collapsing in real time. The Germantown house was emptied this morning, I said. Everything you owned, furniture, clothes, photos, All of it, put on the curb for free. Neighbors took it all. The property sold to a developer for demolition. No, your wife is facing federal fraud charges, tax evasion, conspiracy. The IRS has been investigating her for 8 months. She owes over $400,000 in back taxes, plus penalties. Prison time is likely. Silence on the line. 10 seconds. 15. Just Leora crying and resort lobby ambient noise. Then Everett, barely a whisper. You're my father. And you tried to steal my church. You plotted with your wife to have me declared incompetent so you could seize everything I built over 30 years of ministry. You excluded me from a family trip I paid for so you could file legal papers while I was unreachable. We didn't mean... You meant every word, every action, every betrayal. I paused. So I took it all. The accounts, the property, your future. I gave you exactly what you tried to give me. Nothing. Another long silence. You wanted to take my church, my legacy, my reputation, I said. You wanted to declare me incompetent and steal everything I built. Instead, you're stranded in the Caribbean with nothing, no home, no money, no future, and federal prosecutors waiting when you land. The line clicked dead. He'd hung up. Or maybe the satellite connection finally dropped. Either way, there was nothing left to say. My phone rang again at 11:30 Monday night. Serena's name on the screen. And when I answered, I heard only whispered breathing and distant behind her. The muffled sounds of Everett and Leora shouting at each other in another room. I'd sat alone for hours after hanging up on Everett. Now my granddaughter was calling. Grandpa. Her voice was barely audible. Are you there? I'm here, sweetheart. Where are you? Storage room, at the resort. I'm hiding. She was trying not to cry. They took my phone, but I borrowed one from a cleaning lady. Grandpa, is it true? Did you do all the things Mom and Dad are saying? What are they saying, sweetheart? That you took all the money, that you sold their house, that you knew about everything and you were planning this for months. Her whisper cracked. They've been screaming for hours. I can hear them through the walls. Is it true? I closed my eyes. What else do you hear? Mom crying, Dad pacing. They keep saying your name over and over. They're saying terrible things about you. Serena, listen to me carefully. Your mother and father were trying to take something that wasn't theirs. I had to protect myself. But the house... She was crying now, trying to stay quiet. Their house... All their stuff on the curb. People are posting photos on Facebook. My friends are texting me asking what happened. That property was in my name. They were going to try to take it from me. I sold it first. Silence, except for her breathing, and the distant sound of Leora's voice rising in the background. I'd spent 6 months planning revenge, 4 days executing it, and hadn't felt a moment of doubt or regret. But hearing Serena's whispered voice, scared and confused in a storage room half a world away, made something crack inside my chest. Grandpa, she whispered, that recording I made, did I destroy my own parents? No, sweetheart, no. They made choices. You just showed me the truth. But Mom won't stop crying. And Dad, I've never seen him like this. He looks empty. Her voice broke completely. He just sits there staring at nothing. And it's partially my fault because I gave you that recording and you... Stop. I kept my voice gentle but firm. You did nothing wrong, you hear me? You protected your grandfather. That took courage. It doesn't feel like courage. It feels like I betrayed my own family. They betrayed mine first. You just refused to help them do it. She was quiet for a long moment. I heard a door slam in the background. More shouting. I'm scared, she whispered. I don't know what's going to happen when we get home. We don't have a house anymore. Mom's talking about prison. Dad won't even look at her. You're going to be okay. I promise. Another long pause. Then, so quiet, I almost missed it.
Grandpa, when we get home,
Can I still live with you, like we talked about? I couldn't speak for 5 seconds. My throat had closed completely. This 16-year-old girl hiding in a storage room. Parents destroyed. Future uncertain. And she still wanted to be with me.
I don't want to be with them anymore.
Serena whispered.
I still want to live with you.
My voice broke. Yes. Yes, sweetheart. Always. She started crying harder, but differently. Relief instead of fear.
I have to go,
She whispered.
Someone's coming. I love you, Grandpa.
I love you too. The line went dead. I sat in my dark living room for a long time. I'd destroyed Everett and Leora completely, systematically, without mercy. I'd won every battle, secured every victory. But Serena's whispered, "I still want to live with you," kept echoing in my head. And for the first time since this began, I felt something besides cold satisfaction. I felt the weight of what I'd done to a family that included a 16-year-old girl who still called me Grandpa. Tuesday morning arrived with the precision I had engineered. Rachel Cunningham called at 8:15. The federal prosecutor, 42 years old, with a reputation for dismantling financial fraud schemes across 3 states, spoke with the clinical efficiency of someone who had done this 100 times before. Mr. Garrison, the grand jury returned indictments this morning. Leora Whitfield faces 12 counts of conspiracy to commit fraud, elder exploitation, and wire fraud. Dr. Gerald Hobart faces 18 counts, including medical fraud and falsifying competency evaluations. Your son faces a choice. I stood in my kitchen, coffee cooling in my hand. What choice? Cooperation testimony in exchange for immunity, or indictment as a co-conspirator within 72 hours. The evidence suggests he knew about the guardianship plan, but didn't actively participate in the fraud scheme. That distinction matters legally. Entry twist. The law was offering Everett mercy. I had specifically engineered him not to deserve. He won't cooperate, I said. He'll protect her, then he'll be indicted Friday morning. Rachel's voice carried no judgment. The arrest warrants execute regardless of their location. Interpol coordinates with Caribbean authorities for extradition if necessary. I thanked her and ended the call. 3 days. They had 3 days to realize the trap had federal walls. Marcus called Wednesday afternoon. They're scrambling. Everett's trying to book emergency flights back. The resort charged their only remaining credit card for the room. It declined. They're negotiating with management. Thursday. Luther sent a text. Court administrator confirmed. Guardianship petition formally dismissed. Permanent record shows dismissal with prejudice, plus judicial referral for criminal investigation. It's done. Friday morning. I sat in my study watching the clock. 9 o'clock passed. Rachel would be filing the final indictment paperwork now. Everett had made his choice through silence, protecting Leora until the end. Pattern interrupt 1. How does love survive when the object of that love destroys everything you've built? Marcus sent the final photographs at 3:45. Memphis International Airport. Terminal B arrivals. My son, daughter-in-law, and granddaughter walking through sliding glass doors carrying single carry-on bags each. Everett's designer suit wrinkled beyond recognition. Leora's hair pulled back without styling. Serena wearing resort clothes in October Tennessee weather. Arms wrapped around herself. The timestamp showed the complete timeline. 6 days ago, they had boarded that flight, radiating prosperity. Now they returned to nothing. No home, no accounts, no vehicles, no assets. The photographer captured Everett borrowing $60 cash from a traveler to pay for a taxi. I studied that image for 20 minutes. My son, reduced to begging strangers for cab fare. Exactly what I had designed. Exactly what justice demanded. Pattern interrupt 2. Victory tastes like ashes when you have to swallow it alone. Marcus's final text arrived at 4:30. Surveillance contract complete. Final report delivers Monday. They took a cab to Leora's sister's house in Hickory Hill. The sister let them in, but the conversation through the window looked hostile. Want me to continue monitoring? I typed, no, we're done. I sat in the study as afternoon faded to evening. The house felt enormous and silent. Every piece of furniture I had saved, every possession I had protected, every dollar I had defended surrounded me like museum exhibits. I had won completely. So why did complete victory feel like I had lost something irretrievable? Exit twist. Winning everything means nothing when you realize you've become exactly what you are fighting against. The prosecutor would call Monday with formal indictment details. The trials would consume months. Serena would be caught in the middle, forced to choose between her parents and her grandfather. I had saved myself from their predation. But who would save Serena from mine? 23 church council members filled the Cornerstone conference room Monday morning, 3 days after my family's return from the Caribbean. And every face turned toward me with questions about what had really happened. I had spent the weekend organizing truth into something they could absorb without destroying the church we had built together. 3 months ago, I began, standing at the head of the table. Legal documents were filed claiming I was mentally incompetent and unable to manage church financial matters. The room stilled. Those claims were false, fabricated by a physician who never examined me, supported by family members who stood to benefit financially. I kept my voice level, pastoral. I want you to know the truth, not for sympathy, but so this church can protect itself from similar threats in the future. I distributed copies of Judge Blackwell's dismissal order. 23 people read in silence. Federal Judge Patricia Blackwell dismissed the guardianship petition immediately, finding no evidence of incompetence. I placed the prosecutor's letter on the table. The individuals who filed that petition now face federal fraud charges. Independent medical evaluations confirmed what you already knew. David Merrick, the council chair, leaned forward. Pastor, we never believed you were incompetent. We knew something was wrong. I appreciate that. I met his eyes. But belief isn't enough. We need systems that protect this church from manipulation. Entry twist arrived in Sandra Whitmore's voice, steady and certain. Pastor Garrison, this council never questioned your authority or competence for 1 second. We questioned the motives of the people attacking you. Heads nodded around the table. Complete vindication. They had never doubted me. I'd rehearsed this presentation for 2 days, refining every word. What I couldn't rehearse was how it would feel to stand where Everett and I had led worship together for years. Knowledge he'd never stand here again. My son was involved. The words landed like stones in still water. That's the hardest truth I have to share. Everett participated in the scheme that attempted to seize church assets and remove me from leadership. Silence stretched. No one moved. He made choices I cannot defend, but I will not destroy him further in front of this body. I looked at the empty chair where Everett had sat during council meetings for 8 years. What happens to him now is between him, his conscience, and the federal prosecutors. Ezra Kendrick spoke quietly from the back. You're protecting him even now. He's still my son. I moved to the reforms. Independent financial audits. Dual signature requirements for transactions over $10,000. Term limits for asset managers. Quarterly transparency reports to the full council. David stood. I move we approve all proposed reforms and formally reaffirm Pastor Garrison's full authority and competence. Second. 3 voices called. The vote was unanimous. Then David began clapping. Sandra joined him. One by one, all 23 council members rose to their feet. Pattern interrupt arrived like a revelation I didn't want. The applause filled the room like water filling a sinking ship, loud and encompassing, and ultimately unable to change the fact that something irreplaceable had already been lost beneath the surface. I stood there, accepting their affirmation, their loyalty, their trust restored. My professional vindication was complete. Exit twist settled over me with crushing clarity. They were standing, applauding my integrity and resilience, and the space where Everett should be standing beside me as associate pastor remained permanently, irreversibly empty. The ovation continued. I nodded my thanks, maintaining composure while recognizing this moment for what it truly was. My greatest triumph and my deepest loss occurring simultaneously. After the meeting ended and council members filed out, offering handshakes and affirmations, Ezra remained behind. He approached quietly. "You protected him," Ezra said. "Even after everything, you protected Everett's reputation." I looked at the empty chair where my son used to sit during council meetings. "He's still my son," I said. "That doesn't change just because everything else did." Everett's text had been simple. "Can we talk? Just us. Please." So I chose a downtown Memphis coffee shop neither of us had history with, arriving 10 minutes early to watch my son walk in, looking 10 years older than he had 2 weeks ago. The weight loss was visible. His suit, once tailored perfectly, hung loose at the shoulders. The confident pastor's presence he had cultivated for years had been replaced by someone defeated, uncertain how to occupy space. We ordered coffee in silence. He paid with cash borrowed from Leora's sister. We sat at a corner table near the window. "I don't expect forgiveness," Everett began, voice rough. "I just needed you to hear me say, I'm sorry." "I'm listening." "I destroyed everything. The church position, our family, your trust." He stared into his coffee cup. "I know what I did." I waited. "Apologies are easy. Accountability is harder. Leora convinced me you were actually sick." He looked up, eyes searching mine for something. Understanding, maybe. Absolution. That we were helping you. Protecting you from yourself. "You believed I had dementia, your own father." She had documents, medical reports from Dr. Hobart. Everett's voice gained momentum, building justification. "I thought I was protecting you from financial exploitation, from making decisions that would hurt the church." Entry twist arrived in that shift, subtle but unmistakable. My son's apology transforming into deflection, blame sliding toward Leora, like water finding the path of least resistance. "She manipulated me, Dad, showed me falsified evaluations, convinced me you were declining mentally and hiding it out of pride." I wanted to believe him. That's the hardest truth. Sitting across from my son, seeing his pain, hearing his explanations, part of me desperately wanted to believe Leora had manipulated him, that my boy was still in there somewhere, untainted. But I had the recording. I knew better. "I have the recording. Everett." He froze. "Your voice. Leora's. The Whitfields. Planning how to seize my church, divide the assets, put me in a supervised facility." I kept my tone even, factual. The guardianship wasn't about protecting me. It was about control. She manipulated. You're a grown man, a pastor. I leaned forward slightly. You made choices. Own them or don't, but don't lie to me about what happened. Silence settled between us like fog. Everett's hands shook slightly around his coffee cup. "I was weak," he finally said. "I wanted the security she promised, the financial stability, and I convinced myself it was for the right reasons." That was closer to truth. Not complete, but closer. "What happens now?" Everett asked quietly. "Is there any way back? Any way to rebuild what we had?" The question hung in the air between us. I looked at my son, really looked at him. The boy I had raised, baptized, ordained, the man who had stood beside me in ministry for years, the person who had tried to destroy me. "No." The word landed with finality, but I'll see you at Serena's events, graduations, birthdays, holidays when she wants both of us there. Exit twist crystallized in my next words. The boundary drawn not from anger, but from protective clarity. For her sake, not yours. She shouldn't lose everyone because of your choices. Everett's eyes filled. That's more than I deserve. Yes, it is. Pattern interrupt arrived in the stillness that followed. Everett stood to leave, pausing at the table. For a moment I thought he might hug me, might try one last appeal. He didn't. He just nodded once and walked out. I watched through the window as he got into a borrowed car and drove away. The door closed quietly, not with the slam of anger or the drama of confrontation, but with the soft, irreversible click of something ending. After Everett left, I sat alone with my coffee for another 20 minutes, watching the door he'd walked through. The barista, a young woman with kind eyes, eventually approached. "Are you okay, sir?" "Yes," I said. "What else do you say when you've just watched the relationship with your son end, not with explosion, but with quiet, mutual acknowledgement that some things, once broken, cannot be repaired?" Outside. Memphis moved on like nothing had changed. Inside, I knew everything had. The Memphis Commercial Appeal headline appeared on my desk Thursday morning, August 12th, 2 months after everything collapsed. Local woman sentenced in elder fraud scheme. Former pastor's wife receives probation. Doctor loses license. I had left the coffee shop 2 months ago, knowing everything with Everett had ended. Now the legal system was delivering its final verdicts. The article detailed Leora's plea agreement. Guilty to conspiracy and elder fraud. 5-year prison sentence suspended with supervised probation. 200 hours community service. Mandatory restitution to victims. The photograph showed her entering the courthouse wearing plain clothes, no jewelry, none of the polished financial advisor presentation she had cultivated for years. Mrs. Garrison showed remorse. The article quoted the prosecutor, stating she regretted the pain caused to her family. I read that line twice. She regretted the pain, not the plan, not the conspiracy, just the pain it caused. Entry twist settled over the page like dust. Luther had offered to accompany me to the sentencing hearing, but I'd declined. I'd already won. Being there wouldn't change anything. Now, reading about her conviction in newsprint instead of witnessing it in person, I realized the personal vendetta had transformed into something else entirely. Detached, clinical. Someone else's victory. The article continued with Dr. Gerald Hobart's fate. Medical license permanently revoked by the Tennessee Board of Medical Examiners for falsifying patient evaluations. Federal charges pending for fraud and conspiracy. Barred from medical practice in any state. Dr. Hobart signed cognitive assessments claiming Vernon Garrison showed dementia symptoms without ever examining him. The medical board statement read, "This represents a severe breach of professional ethics and patient trust. 30 years of medical practice ended in disgrace. For what? A few $1,000s from Leora." The calculation seemed insane now, looking at it from the other side of his complete destruction. Had I imagined this moment during those 6 months of planning? Reading about her conviction, her ruin, their total defeat, I must have. But I'd never imagined it would feel this empty. The final paragraphs detailed the IRS action. Leora's financial advisory company dissolved. Assets seized for unpaid taxes and penalties totaling $437,000. Client accounts transferred to legitimate advisors under court supervision. Her professional reputation destroyed beyond recovery. IRS. Criminal investigation confirmed the case involved 3 years of tax evasion and fraudulent business deductions, the article stated. $400,000. The IRS had extracted more from her than she'd ever tried to steal from me. The irony would have been satisfying 6 months ago. Now, it just felt like numbers on a page. I set the newspaper down and stared at my office wall. This is what I'd wanted. Complete accountability, total consequences. Justice administered through proper legal channels with documentation and public record. So why did reading this verdict feel like looking at someone else's victory? Luther had called it vindication. The Church Council had called it justice. Ezra had called it necessary. They were probably right on all counts. Leora had committed fraud. Hobart had falsified medical documents. The conspiracy had been real and dangerous. But sitting in my office reading about their convictions, I felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction. No sense that balance had been restored. Pattern interrupt arrived like an unwelcome truth. The newspaper felt heavier than it should, like it carried the weight of everything I'd sacrificed to get this headline. My son, my family, the man I used to be who believed in redemption over retribution. Exit twist crystallized in the silence of my empty office. The complete legal victory I'd fought for. Leora convicted and doctor destroyed. And IRS seizing everything brought no satisfaction or peace. Only hollow recognition that revenge, even when perfectly executed and legally justified, cannot repair what was broken. It's done, I said to the empty room. I folded the newspaper carefully and placed it in my desk drawer. Not sure why I was keeping it. Outside my office window, Serena was helping set up for Sunday school in the courtyard. She'd moved in with me 2 weeks ago. Her bedroom, the one bright spot in a house that felt too quiet. Justice was complete. The guilty were punished. And I sat alone in my office, wondering if winning had been worth what it cost. Serena's borrowed Honda pulled into my driveway on a Saturday morning in late July, trunk loaded with cardboard boxes, and her entire 16-year-old life compressed into what fit in one car after the family court. Judge signed the custody order 3 days earlier. I had questioned whether victory was worth the cost. Watching her park, I realized the answer wasn't simple. We carried boxes into the guest room that was now permanently hers. My mother's old furniture still filled the space, oak dresser and bookshelf that had survived 3 decades. Is it weird that I'm excited about unpacking? Serena set a box on the bed. I never thought I'd be excited about moving. You're safe here. That's all that matters. I know. She smiled. The first genuine smile I'd seen from her in months. That's why I'm excited. I haven't felt safe in I don't remember how long. Entry twist arrived as quiet recognition amid all the destruction I'd engineered. The legal battles and systematic revenge. Something pure and hopeful was emerging. I got to raise my granddaughter in a stable home. Both of us got a second chance at family that wasn't built on betrayal. We worked in comfortable silence, arranging clothes, stacking textbooks. She'd start senior year at a new high school in 6 weeks. Will people at the new school know? She asked. About Mom and Dad? Some might, but you're not responsible for their choices. You're just Serena. Just Serena. She tested the words. I think I'd like to try being just Serena for a while. I watched her organize books on the shelf. Romance novels and study guides, and a worn Bible from confirmation. The simple domesticity of it. Helping my granddaughter settle into a room. Felt like the first normal thing I'd done in 8 months. Will I see them? Serena asked, without looking at me. Mom and Dad? Supervised visits if they request them, but no requirement. I sat on the bed. You have the choice, sweetheart. Do you think Dad will want to see me? I think he wants to. Whether he can face you after everything, I don't know. Serena nodded slowly, processing the complicated reality. Is it bad that I'm not sure I want to see him yet? No, sweetheart, that's honest. Honest is good. She returned to unpacking. Near the bottom of one box, she found a framed photograph, 5 years old, taken at a church picnic. Vernon, Everett, Leora, and Serena, all together, smiling, happy. Before everything broke. I expected her to hide it. Instead, she walked to the wall and hung it above her desk. You sure you want that photo up after everything?
It was real, Grandpa. She stepped back. We were happy once. Pretending we weren't doesn't help anything.
Pattern interrupt arrived like wisdom I should have learned myself. That photo on the wall was like a door. You could look through it at what used to be, or you could close it and move forward. Serena chose to leave it open, but walk past it towards something new. Maybe that was the only way healing worked. When did she become wiser than me? Exit twist settled over the room with gentle finality. The old family photo hung not to deny the pain, but to acknowledge that love was real once and could be real again in different form. Resolution didn't require erasing the past, just learning to carry it while moving forward. We finished unpacking by early afternoon. Serena made us sandwiches for lunch, her first meal in her new home. Sitting at my kitchen table, watching her eat and talk about senior year plans, I realized something. I'd spent 6 months planning revenge and achieving justice, destroying everyone who'd tried to destroy me. But this moment, this quiet Saturday lunch with my granddaughter safely home, was the first time since everything began that I felt like I'd actually won something worth having. The past was broken. The future was uncertain. But right now, in this moment, we had each other, and maybe that was enough. I stood at the cornerstone pulpit on a Sunday morning in late summer, looking out at 300 congregation members gathered for our rescheduled anniversary celebration. Not in the Caribbean as originally planned, but here, in this simple Memphis sanctuary where we'd always belonged. 2 months had passed since Serena moved in. The quiet Saturday lunches had become routine, became the foundation of something worth protecting. The sanctuary was decorated simply. Flowers from members' gardens lined the altar. Hand-painted banners hung from the balcony. Potluck tables waited in the fellowship hall. No luxury resort, just genuine community. We planned something elaborate, I began. God had different plans for us. Better plans, I think. A few knowing nods rippled through the pews. This church isn't about luxury trips or impressive appearances. It's about this. Us, together, authentic and real. Amen, Pastor, someone called. Entry twist settled over me like sunlight. The simple local celebration, with garden flowers and potluck instead of luxury resort, proved more meaningful and authentic than the elaborate Caribbean trip would have been. The canceled plan was actually a blessing. I looked down at my notes, then set them aside. These people didn't need a polished sermon. They needed truth. I learned this year that revenge, even when justified, cannot heal. Only grace can heal. The sanctuary was silent. I learned that protecting what matters sometimes means letting go of what looks impressive. I paused, and I learned that family is who shows up, who stays loyal, who loves without condition. 6 months ago, I'd stood at this same pulpit, planning systematic revenge. Today, I stood here, grateful to be alive. Grateful for second chances. Grateful that destruction isn't the only form of justice, and grace isn't just a sermon topic. You never wavered. I continued, looking around at familiar faces. When others questioned, you stood firm. That means more than I can express. David Merrick nodded from his usual seat. Sandra Whitmore dabbed at her eyes. This church, you, are why I fought to protect what we've built together. In the back row, Ezra Kendrick sat quietly, his cover as administrator still intact. The congregation never knew his true role as investigator. They just knew him as the man who'd helped their pastor through difficult times. Pattern interrupt arrived like a revelation. When was the last time I'd smiled and meant it? March. February. Before I knew about the betrayal, I couldn't remember. But this moment, standing before people who'd trusted without demanding explanations, felt like the first honest breath I'd taken in months. Looking at this community, at the faces I know and love, I understand, finally, what we're celebrating. My eyes moved across the congregation. Not perfection, not success, just faithfulness. Just showing up, just loving each other through everything. Serena sat in the front pew, where she'd been sitting every Sunday since moving in. She was smiling up at me with pride and love. No shadow of her parents' betrayal in her expression. She belonged here. Exit twist crystallized in that moment. My first genuine smile since the story began came not from revenge completed or justice achieved, but from seeing Serena safe and happy in a community that loved us both. This was the moment of true healing and peace. I smiled back at her. Really smiled. The kind that reaches your eyes and means something. "Thank you," I said, voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for being the church we're called to be." The service ended with hymns, old, familiar songs, sung by voices that knew every word. After the benediction, the congregation filed to the fellowship hall. Serena walked beside me, greeting members who'd welcomed her without judgment. I watched her laugh with the youth group, watched her help serve desserts, watched her belong. Maybe this was what resolution looked like. Not dramatic vindication or perfect justice, but just moving forward together, one Sunday potluck at a time. The porch swing creaked in the warm Memphis evening as I sat alone after the church celebration, watching fireflies drift across my front yard and thinking about everything I'd won and everything I'd lost in the 8 months since. I first discovered the envelope in Leora's car. The potluck had been perfect, simple, authentic, real. Now, the quiet evening invited accounting. Everett was gone. Not dead, but gone from my life in every way that matters. My daughter-in-law convicted and ruined. My family scattered and broken. The illusion that blood automatically meant loyalty shattered permanently. But my church stood protected. My integrity vindicated. My granddaughter safe upstairs doing homework in a stable home. Was it worth it? Destroying my family to protect my church. The question assumed I'd had a choice. Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. Either way, I'd make the same decisions again. I used to preach about turning the other cheek, about forgiveness and grace and redemption. Now I was the man who'd spent 6 months planning perfect revenge, who'd systematically dismantled everyone who'd tried to destroy him. Am I a better man? Worse. Just different. The Vernon Garrison who stood at the pulpit last January, trusting and naive, believing family meant unconditional loyalty. That man was gone. I'd become someone harder, more calculating, someone capable of cold, strategic destruction. I didn't regret the transformation, but I recognized its cost. I could never be that trusting again. Never quite believe in simple goodness the way I once did. People talk about closure like it's a door that shuts cleanly. But some doors don't close. They just stop mattering as much. Everett would always be my son. That door stayed open. I just learned to stop walking through it. I'm the man who protected what mattered. That has to be enough. The screen door creaked. Serena stepped onto the porch and settled beside me on the swing without asking permission or explaining why. We sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only exists between people who don't need to fill every space with words. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "Good service today," she said quietly. "You seemed lighter." First time in months I didn't feel like I was carrying something heavy I couldn't put down. Is it over? Really over? Yes, for better or worse, it's finished. We rocked gently, the swing's rhythm matching the cricket song from the bushes. The church steeple lights glowed in the distance, steady and sure. "Do you regret it, Grandpa?" Serena asked. "Any of it?" I thought about that. Really thought. The systematic revenge, the cold calculations, the complete destruction I'd engineered, the son I'd lost, the family I'd shattered. Entry twist arrived as simple truth. My only regret is not acting sooner, not seeing through the lies faster. Serena's head on my shoulder felt like an anchor, not the kind that drags you down, but the kind that keeps you steady when currents try to pull you into deep water. Some anchors save you by holding you in place. I thought you'd say you regretted hurting them. They chose to hurt themselves when they chose to betray trust. I looked at the church steeple. I just protected what they tried to take. A firefly landed on the porch rail, pulsing soft light into the darkness. "What did you learn?" Serena asked. "From all of it." I considered the question carefully. 8 months of discovery and planning and execution and aftermath. What wisdom had I earned through all that pain? Exit twist crystallized in words I'd never spoken, but always known. Sometimes, to protect what's truly precious, you must release what you once thought was everything. Serena was quiet for a long moment. Then she squeezed my hand once, stood, and went inside to finish her homework. I stayed on that porch swing as fireflies faded and the Memphis night settled warm and heavy around me. Inside. Tomorrow's sermon waited on my desk, something about grace and second chances. Outside, the church steeple lights glowed steady, marking the place I'd fought to protect and the community that made the fighting worthwhile. I listened to crickets and distant traffic, holding the weight of everything I'd done and everything I'd become, and finding, finally, that I could carry it. And to you listening to my story, remember this lesson I learned the hard way. I spent 6 months planning perfect revenge. I won every legal battle, protected everything I'd built, and destroyed everyone who tried to take it from me. But victory came with a price I'm still paying. My son is gone. My family is scattered. The man I was before all this, that trusting pastor who believed in simple goodness, he's gone too. Don't make my mistake of thinking revenge can ever truly heal betrayal. What I learned through all this pain is that protecting what's precious sometimes means releasing what you thought was everything. I had to let go of my son to protect my granddaughter and my church. That choice still breaks my heart, but I believe God put me through this trial to teach me the difference between what looks important and what truly is. Family isn't just blood. It's who stays loyal, who loves without condition, who shows up when everything falls apart. Serena is my family now, and I thank God every day for the second chance to raise her right. If my story made you think about trust, betrayal, or what you'd do in my position, please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your perspective. If you know someone facing a difficult family situation, share this story with them. And if you want to hear more stories about life's hardest lessons, please subscribe to this channel. Your support means everything. Thank you for staying until the very end. Some details in this story have been changed or fictionalized for storytelling purposes and to protect privacy. What matters most is the lesson it carries. God bless you all.